Alright, so we're gonna get started on the agenda
That's nice.
1, 2.
until everybody gets in here.
Oh, your number. I was.
Alright, so the first piece of legislation is ordinance number 2, Councilman Burmaster. It is the Compassion Coalition. It is a parcel 318-48-3-85 .3 on Warren Street. Are you okay with that, in the amount of
Yeah.
$500? The next one is a Commissioner of Deeds for Stephanie L. Teague. I believe this came up, she's a new deputy clerk for Oneida County City Clerk's Office, and we're just doing something clerical.
Did we pass this last week?
Yeah,
Well,
we did.
so
There was a
an
clerical error.
Yeah, there was an error.
So this is just,
The clerical error
was the date.
Commissioner Deeds.
Oh,
the
okay,
date,
that
so
sounds
we just have to
familiar.
repass.
Yeah, okay, that sounds familiar.
Okay. The next is a Commissioner of Deeds for John Moranti.
I don't have that in my packet.
It is the third
It's the next one.
piece.
It's there. Keep going.
Resolution
Okay,
number
all right.
2.
Why is that name familiar?
Because he ran for office.
Oh, okay. What did he run for?
Ran for Frank's seat.
Yeah.
He ran, okay.
I'm glad that you don't remember him.
The next one
It's a dim memory.
is
It's a dim
for 301 and 319.55-1-34 Politary Ave. It is a property that's being purchased for $1,000. I'm okay with that.
Oh, I remember that.
The next one is for a property at 928 Lansing Street. It is being purchased for the amount of $7,000. I'm good with that one as well.
Or is it Lansing? What about the pallet? I haven't been.
The Politary, we did that one last.
Oh, okay, doesn't matter, okay. So Lansing, you're good with that?
Correct. The next one is David Rafaro for be it resolved that he will be a marriage officer. Is everyone okay with that?
No, he loves to do that.
Only if he doesn't take any weddings away from me. Damn it, I
If
want to
you guys
marry
vote-
somebody.
If you vote no right now, he'll be very, very.
I want to marry somebody. Anybody want to get married?
Just put it out there.
I don't
I
see
know,
People
I
use
put it on
it.
Facebook.
People use it.
I ran for office so that I could marry.
The next one is the Board of Estimate and Apportionment for 2019-2020 fiscal year. It is a transfer coming from the fire communication equipment, $20,000 going into the fire communication telephone. So it is,
Hold on. Where is it?
Anything with the Board of Estimate, who's our
There-
guy? in the-
There.
There are two B and E's. Jack,
Jack is good?
What's that?
the B and E,
Yep, good.
E and A.
DNA.
Sorry.
Good.
it's internal from fire to fire, so
Yep.
generally it's. Ordinance authorizing the sale of DPW and parks vehicles and equipment for auction. Anyone have any questions about that?
Another E and A.
No, there's E&A, it was just different up here, so it looked like it was a different, yeah, we need to change some things around.
We're fine with that.
So it is the police administration, physician fees of the amount of $30,000 going to the police administration repairs, in the amount of $30,000. That is the end of the packet. Wanted to have, Mr.
Are we gonna do audit or Vin Gilroy?
Well, I want to do that one first, just because he's here and I want him to answer on that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, good.
Yeah, I already talked to Alan
No, that's fine. You didn't say a name, so I didn't know which one you were.
You want to do that next?
Said he,
for Harbor Point.
because they're both dudes.
Do you have the Harbor Point legislation?
So this is,
Now we'll be talking about what
It's not in
was.
this packet though, right?
No,
it's not in
it's
that
stuff that's
packet.
in,
It's in
stuff
the
that's
out of
in
committee.
committee.
They're coming out of committee.
Controller?
But you have
It may,
Where's our budget director?
I don't have donations
Right here, right here.
I'm working on it.
well, this is,
She back
this is
there?
guidance, so the process, the way it goes,
Heather,
is
would you
that
like to come over
if
here
there's
so
a
you
piece
can
that we want to
participate?
talk about, what we can do
We're gonna make a
is
spot for
we can have it in front of us and she'll pass it around to everybody.
Okay,
So
so
we all
I'm just
have-
saying I don't have it in there yet.
Correct, you won't have it because it's not on the agenda for tonight. If
Okay.
we choose to pull it out, we can.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, this is
okay.
This is normal,
this is normal.
status quo.
Mhm.
So,
You wanna sit here, Alan?
Vin and,
Vin Gilroy from Harbor Point Development Corporation is
something
actually going to
for us?
speak on the Wells Ave acquisition first,
Okay.
and then we'll be,
Oh,
let me go grab him, because I think he's out
and,
here.
and Paul Romano.
Yeah.
I think so.
well, I was getting a seat for Alan.
This is the piece that we were,
Yeah, I know.
What does it look like?
I'm looking for the piece. I'm looking for the piece.
You guys can sit here,
Okay.
I'm just gonna grab my coffee and stand up while you guys are talking.
It's this one.
Alright.
Okay, Harbor Point. The acquisition of certain real property?
correct,
Still here, huh?
yes. So there was a lot of talk about this piece of legislation, and we do understand that it is pretty time sensitive. So I wanted to make sure you were here to answer any questions that anybody might have regarding it. I personally don't have any questions regarding it. I'm okay with it. It is something that came in front of us before. And so,
Would you like to pass a copy of
oh, she did.
I
Oh,
don't
I
have
thought
it.
she did. Never
It's
mind.
something we got in email.
No,
Yeah.
she's,
Hard
I
copy.
thought
Fill her
she
in.
Well, yeah, yeah.
It was my fault. I didn't tell you.
No, if they're giving it now, I know.
Coming around, coming around.
Coming in hot.
So if anybody has any questions, the people who will answer those questions.
Right.
I know Joe had, you had some questions on this.
Well-
Was there an actual?
I did have some questions, and I had the, Mr. Romano gave me the answers, and, so I'm pretty good with my questions. I'm okay. I just was curious at the time, when I first read the legislation, I wasn't sure if the city owned the property and sold it to Vision's property, and I was just curious what they paid for it and what the new property was being, what they were buying a new property back for. And that's all I wanted to know, and I understand completely what we're doing. I think we need to do that, and I don't have a problem with it.
Should I give just a couple highlights? Just,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, just want to make sure everybody knows this, it did come before, in a caucus meeting before, and it went into executive, it went into details about the property, but a number of things had happened first. So it did come here before, and we did the bond resolution, and that was all written in there, the property acquisition, so the financing was done at that time. Financing is aging, and I know Bill probably wants to get this done, because we will, this was, I think the key thing, this is an ESD covered by Empire State Development Grant. It's 100% reimbursed. So it's-
$750 that we're putting up?
Yes.
You will get that back.
Yeah, we'll get it back.
We're gonna in turn sell it to you for,
No, not us.
or give it to you for $1.
It's a next, there is a transfer of property that would happen next to the LDC. Is that a resolution here too, or is that separate?
This is a resolution.
Just
So
something I
this
read.
is the resolution for the acquisition.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
in front of you is the transfer
No.
resolution, that's
No.
separate. Yeah, but that would be the case. The LDC would then, in order for the LDC, the chairman's here to do the work, right, to finish the project, you would have to transfer. This particular parcel, what happens is, this is where Wells Ave, you come down to Wells Ave ends. Where it ends is where these properties are. Those properties will basically mostly become part of a roundabout that will connect the extension of Wells Ave through the harbor site into that roundabout. It would be an angled road into that roundabout and connect Wells Ave. So Wells and Wers would come together at that roundabout. At some point, when all that work is done, those roads are completed, the LDC will go through the process of making those city roads and city right of way. So. Yeah.
I want to just ask a very naive question, because I'm new to all this. Why is it that we have to spend the money first and then the state will reimburse us at 100%? Why doesn't the state just buy it for us? I know that that's a naive question.
I can maybe help a little
Okay.
bit with that. So, well, first to start, many grants, maybe even most grants that we receive from the state
Are
are
like
structured as reimbursable grants.
Right.
And that's because they want us to do all the work, right? We're gonna find the property, we're gonna vet the property, we're gonna do all of the work, and we're gonna do all of the, take on basically all of the liability, right? So basically, and plus, we have to make sure that we're satisfying all of the conditions on the grant.
Okay,
And if we aren't satisfying all of those conditions, then we can't get reimbursed. And so for them to go out and spend the money, they aren't, it wouldn't make as much
Okay.
sense to the state.
Right.
Right, when they can,
Okay.
it's not as much of a a lever.
Right,
Using
right.
excessive word.
To make us do it exactly how they want us to do it.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, thank you. Is it absolute, like, when we say it's 100% guaranteed that we'll get this money back? It's 100% guaranteed that we'll get this money back?
Yeah, we've already got approved for the grant.
Yeah, and we're in a process where this will go into the fourth reimbursement request, and they've been timely, and they've had no problem with any of the paperwork.
Okay,
So, you know.
Okay.
All right, but I've been, being on the Harbor
Thank you
Point
very
Committee,
much. Yeah.
I've been monitoring it.
right,
As they're saying, I can verify that.
okay.
As soon as it gets approved, we do our thing here with the city, we move it over, and then when we get paid for it, so.
Great, so there's no chance that we end up getting stuck with
No,
something?
negative.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys.
Give it a thumbs up.
Pretty good.
I just,
So that's now how,
you want me?
4 hours, last
I know, last time we were tortured.
Brought a lunch.
There is a seeker exemption, do you want me to file here? Is that?
Oh,
is that
yeah.
further-
Are you talking about the reestablishment of the sewer project?
Yes,
Type 2?
Type 2 action, right. It
I
was,
mean, if you want
If
to talk
you wanna
about
give
that
a
now,
quick-
yeah, give
wait,
us a,
do we have that?
Yes.
it's in the secondary packet, I don't know if
Okay.
you, she has it.
so, that project initially was a project, and you actually did, that was an EFC bonded, an EFC reimbursed project, well, that, low interest loan funding through the Environmental Facilities Corp. It was about $2 million of funding that was associated with it, came through the council previously. Through the hard work of the engineering department, leadership of Debbie Day on the long-term control plan, we actually, what that project was a remote treatment unit that would treat sewage overflow before it went out to the Mohawk at that location. But through separation project efforts that have been done throughout the city, we actually took enough stormwater out, Debbie Day and the engineering department took enough stormwater out of the system where that is no longer overflowing at all at that location. So what was before a remote treatment unit, which was like a swirl concentrator, take the solids out of the overflow and take it to the Mohawk, that overflow now can be completely closed. So the overflow pipe will be closed, the access to the river will be closed, and this project becomes, instead of a remote treatment unit, it becomes basically a new manhole monitoring and an access road. So it actually got smaller even than, so this was a small project before the remote treatment unit, and now it's even smaller. It went from a $2 million project, probably all in, 100,000, at the most, probably with the reconfiguration of this. So the city doesn't even have to do that, doesn't need to do the financing anymore to that level through Environmental Facilities Corp. So it's a big savings. And here, just the Environmental Facilities Corp said to us, we need the council to go back to the seeker and verify now that it's still exempt. And it should be easy because the project's wrong,
Okay, so I have a concern about that. We're in the middle of a climate crisis. The rains are getting worse, they will continue to. This seems like the exact wrong time to be making our storm drain systems and sewer systems smaller. We ought to make them, so, okay, let him answer.
Okay.
And that's a great question, right? And that's true. But what we're doing, the reason why this overflow is not needed anymore goes along with the lines of what you're saying. The city's been constructing storm sewers and separating it. And those storm sewers are being built at higher capacity.
Okay,
So, what's happening is just that the rainwater is not getting into
so what
the
you're making,
sanitary sewer system. It's going into separate pipes and then going to the
so the
river.
thing that you're making smaller is sanitary, because the storms you're making big enough to handle these massive rains that we get
Right.
and are continuing to go.
The city is a permitted combined sewer. A lot of the city, the storm
Right.
and the sanitary go in the same pipes. And then combined sewer overflow means those pipes
Right.
cannot handle
Right.
both the storm and the sanitary
Right.
anymore. So this was one of those locations where during a big rain, it was overflowing. But because we took so much stormwater out, this location does not overflow anymore.
Okay,
So the separation work that was done actually outperformed the predictions, the model
Right.
predictions
okay,
so
right.
far.
Yeah, will they, have you,
We may go to a couple unusual storms in there, how about?
Yes, yes,
Have
we have
you-
a meter in there, and even through that very large storm of,
Halloween.
yeah, Halloween was,
but have you modeled it for 10 inches in 2 hours, not 6 inches in 2 hours? Have you modeled it for
yes,
even
the
worse?
models are usually, they run 50-year, 100-year models. Basically what will happen if you get a very, very unique,
If you get a 500.
500-year event, this location is not available anymore for overflow. It'll find somewhere, it'll overflow at different locations, not at this location. And that- Yeah, but, again, that's gonna be, it's such a large event that it's.
But the best available evidence that we have is that 500 years are going to become the 100-year storm. The 100-year storm is going to become the 25-year storm. The 25-year storm is going to be the annual storm. That's what we're looking at.
Yep, and you're right, all the infrastructure that's being designed these days is being designed, as they call it, resiliency.
Right.
Higher level of resiliency, higher level capacity, and that's right.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
So both of these are being pulled out of committee.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
These have, they're both resolutions, okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be the whole.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And
Every day.
when did we get these?
By email last week?
We can read them for the.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
At this point, I'd like to go into executive session
and you're right. Those.
for 5 to 10 minutes at the most, okay, on
Yeah.
personnel matters.
Do you want me to stay or?
You can go.
Okay.
Yes, I already told him.
Oh, so
He said,
Cameron-
he said it's only gonna take a half an hour. I just wanna get this out of the way
As
now.
long as we're watching
That way
the
there,
time.
he's
All right,
got,
all right.
he's
Very
got
good.
what he needs. That's why I said 5 to 10 minutes,
Very
and I
good,
don't
very
want
good.
this to last longer
We
than
can do it in
that.
15 minutes.
So- Okay, thank you, Alan, for coming. I know that the presentation is going to be kind of a little foreign to people who haven't been here before, this being my 5th one. I still don't fully understand some of the lingo, but ask any question. Alan is credible, he has no problem sticking with us with whatever question we may have. Everyone who's in the audience, there is going to be some information that's going to be given to us. If you could just please keep the talking down so that we can hear everything that's being presented to us, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
I know everybody got a copy of the audit, but I've got a few here, but if somebody wants to look at one.
Floor is yours.
Okay. Just to introduce myself, there are lots of new faces on the committee this year. My name is Alan Walter. We partner with the Bondeo Group. We are the city's independent auditors. We've audited the financial statements of the city, and we've issued our reports. There's actually 2 reports I'd like to go over today. Required communications letter, which I understand was not distributed to everybody. It's a standard level. We'll talk about it tonight, and we'll get it tomorrow.
I apologize for that, was an oversight, they're sitting in the box, so.
It's the same letter you've heard for,
Yeah.
this will be the 6th time,
Yeah.
so there's really nothing terribly earth-shattering here. So the first thing I would like to talk about, though, is the required communications letter. One of the things that we have to inform the committee is if there were any significant changes to accounting policies. And this year, the city was required to adopt GASB Statement 75. GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. That is a standard-setting body that sets the rules for all governments. We would adopt a new accounting standard regarding the accounting for post-employment benefits, or OPEB. You'll see in the financial statements adopting that accounting standard required a prior period adjustment. Also in the financial statements, or in the required communications letter, we talk about significant estimates. You think of the financial statements as numbers, you think of numbers as exact. That's not entirely true. There are some significant estimates that affect the financial statements. The estimates in the financial statements predominantly affect the government-wide financial statements. And those significant estimates are depreciable lives of assets, their fire trucks, and buildings, etc., how long they will last, compensated absences, allowance for uncollectible accounts. Other post-employment benefits is a very significant estimate that's calculated by an actuary, a third-party actuary that's hired. And then your estimate of net pension asset and liability and deferred inflows and outflows flows through the city's participation in the New York State retirement plans. Our role with regard to your estimates is to consider them, and we did that, and we believe that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit, if there are any difficulties in dealing with management, we need to disclose that to you, and we did not. Disagreements with management, the same type thing, if we have any disagreements with management regarding accounting principles, access to records, anything like that, we have to disclose that as well, and we did not.
No fist fights?
No fist fights.
Not this year.
Okay, so you'll get this letter tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll have it in the mailboxes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And then we'll go through the large, I just have the stable copy, you guys have the blue bound, same thing. So let's take a look at the table of contents. I'll walk through what's in here. The entire document is 72 pages long. We're not going to go through every page. So then the financial statement is basically broken into 6 sections. On page 1, beginning on page 1, the independent audit report. Beginning on page 4, management's discussion and analysis. The financial statements
But thank you, Mr.
begin on page 14.
Chairman. Thank you.
Required supplementary information begins on page 58. Supplementary information begins on 63. And the required reports under uniform guidance begin on 66. Uniform guidance is the rules the city needs to follow because the city expends in excess of $750,000 of federal money, so we need a uniform guidance audit. It's important to remember of this 72-page document, we assist in the preparation of financial statements. However, the only pages that are ours are the independent auditor's report on page 1, 66, and 68. The rest of the document is the city. Okay, they're your financial statements, we audit them, we give our opinion on it. Okay? Having said all that, let's jump to page 72. We're not going to be totally done. We're going to go backwards, but we'll start with the. Your hopes were dashed. But this is the bottom line. Exactly, this is the bottom line. So what page 72 is a summary of auditor's report, of auditor's results. So what this does in a one-page summary summarizes the results of the audit for the year. Okay. So under the financial statement section, the type of auditor's report that was issued was unmodified. That's the highest level of assurance we can give on your financial statements. That's the type of report that the bond rating agencies, the federal government, OSC, whoever uses the report, that's what they look for. Internal control, we did have internal control weakness, a couple of things regarding capital projects. No significant deficiencies in reported, no instances of non-compliance. With regard to the federal awards, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. We issued an unmodified opinion on compliance. And there are no audit findings. And the major program that we audited was the Section 8 housing program vouchers. Okay. So having said all that, let's go all the way back to page 1, which is we're definitely not going to hit every page. So page 1 through 3 is the independent auditor's report. So we'll just hit on some of the highlights here. Management's responsibility for the financial statements. So that paragraph, management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Okay, so what we're saying there, they're your financial statements. Okay. Our responsibilities, next paragraph, our responsibility is to express opinions on these financial statements based on our audit. The next paragraph, an audit involves performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Okay, so what do we really do as your auditors? We do 2 types of tests. We do transaction tests, where we test transactions through your accounting system to make sure your controls are working, regardless of the dollar amounts. And then we do substantive tests, where we test account balances, cash, receivables, payables, long-term debt, that kind of thing. Okay, and from those 2 types of tests, we gather audit evidence. and from the audit evidence, we form an opinion, and that opinion can be found on the very top of page 2, which I'll paraphrase. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly the financial position of the city of Utica as of March 31st, 2019. Again, that's what we as auditors call an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance we can give on your financial statements.
So it means we're doing everything right?
That means your financial statements are fairly stated, in our opinion.
Just wanted you to say I just wanted you to say that.
Pages 4 through 13 is the management's discussion analysis. I'm going to skip over that in its entirety. If you don't read the entire 72 pages, my feelings won't be hurt. Read these 10 pages. It gives a good overview, comparative information versus
Which 10 pages? The 4
4
through?
through 13. Management's discussion analysis. And it's written in layman's terms to the extent that it can be.
That's possible.
And then page 14 and 15, so the city presents its financial statements two different ways. So the government-wide financial statements, which begin on page 14, and then fund-level financial statements, which are later in the document. And the differences are, the government-wide financial statements are all the funds of the city combined together, okay, for your general fund, capital projects, community development, et cetera, combined together, plus the long-term assets minus your long-term debt, okay? Whereas at the fund level, it's just current assets. At the government-wide, it's long-term, full accrual basis, regardless of when assets are going to be turned into cash or liabilities paid out. So it presents, it's a required presentation by the GASB, it presents two different, entirely different pictures of the city, okay? So page 14, just very briefly, is your statement in that position. You can see at the very bottom of the page, the city's net position, $39.8 million.
Where are you still on
Okay.
page 14?
On
No, the
page
next page.
14,
Right at the bottom.
the statement in that position for your governmental
In that
activities.
position, end of year.
Yep, I see it.
And then your business type activities, your net position is 26.6 million. Your business type is basically your sewer funds. And then that Utica IDA is a component unit off to the side. Okay. And then you can see here as well, the final, the last liability in the long-term liability section, other post-employment benefits. That was what changed this year. The city recognized $65.9 million as its liability for health insurance to its retirees and to its employees who are projected to become retirees. That's a lot of money.
Zoom, what are we talking about, Bill?
Page 15, I'm going to skip over, is the statement of activities is really just a reciprocal of the statement in that position. Page 16 is your balance sheet for the governmental funds. So the balance sheet for the governmental funds presents the city's financial position using the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is the same methodology that you use at the budget level. Okay, so this may be a little more meaningful for everybody. It's more comparable to the budget. You can see across the top the various funds that the city has, the general fund, community development, which is section 8, and CDBG monies. Capital projects is self-explanatory, and then your non-major funds. There's a schedule on page 63 if you want to see what those are. It's your recreation fund, the permanent fund, debt service, and urban renewal. Okay? The highlights here in the general funds, total assets, with general funds your main operating fund. Total assets, $21.2 million. Total liabilities, $7.9 million. You have some deferred inflows of $6 million, predominantly uncollected property taxes. The accounting formula is assets minus liabilities minus deferred inflows, brings you to your total fund balance. The city's total fund balance was $7.4 million, of which $107,000 was non-spendable 1.3 million is assigned. Of the assigned, 750,000 was appropriated for subsequent year's expenditures. That's the amount that was used to help balance the 2020 budget. The other assigned, 564, was encumbrances, and you had unassigned fund balance of $5.9 million, approximately $6 million.
Can I just note something on this, please, Marianne?
Sure.
Just for everyone who's listening, because it's something that we always ask after and we miss it. This is the audit of the 18-19 budget, even though we're in the 19-20 year budgeting for 2020.
They're on actuals, they're not on estimates.
Right. So this audit is for the year that was already completed, which is not the year we're in.
Right.
So when you see these fund
The year
balances and
ends.
everything,
What's our
it may
fiscal
not
year?
align.
March
March 1st through
March 31st. So April 1st through March.
March 31st. So this is the year that ended April 1st in 2019.
March 31st, but
March
yes.
31st, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Page 17 is again, this is required financial statements. I'll just tell you what this is. This is just a reconciliation of how you get from fund balance, which is your modified accrual, okay? Total fund balance 16 million to your net position of 39.8. So it's the additions and subtractions of your long-term assets, long-term liabilities. Okay. Page 18 is a statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. Let's ignore the general fund. We'll look at that versus the budget. And then you can just see community development, capital projects, non-major. The activity that runs through there, approximately $10 million running through your community development funds. 11 million capital projects expenditures, and about $7 million in the non-major, predominantly debt service payments. Okay. Page 19 is a reconciliation of your changes in fund balance to your change in net position. This, again, is reciprocal of what I talked about before, modified accrual to full accrual adjustments, required financial statement.
How much longer do you have?
2 minutes.
Okay. Then I
7
was
o'clock?
gonna move to extend it, but if you
No.
only get 2 minutes.
Let's go and we'll skip. Let's take a look at the budget versus actual on page 58, and then I'll open up the questions.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if we need to.
But
spend more
we
time.
should-
We
If we do
spoke
extend it, we should
Yeah,
move to
if you need-
extend it.
Yeah, if you need more time.
You guys tell me, I gave you what the,
Yeah.
the reports are, so. Let's look at the,
And any additional questions, my office is available. Alan, we can always reach him. Heather's very familiar with everything, so we can answer your questions for you.
let's take a look at page 58, and then you guys decide whether or not I'm fine with staying.
58?
Yeah, 58 is the budget versus actual. For the general fund, so the highlights here, your total revenue budgeted was 71,509,000. Your actual revenue was 72,210,000, so you had a net favorable revenue variance of 701,000. Your total expenditures budgeted were 67.8. Your actual expenditures were 65.4. You had encumbrances, which are budgetary carryovers, of 564. So you had a net favorable expenditure variance of $1,008,000. So the bottom line versus the budget is the very last, or I'm sorry, the third line up. You had budgeted to use $1 million of your fund balance, $1,059,000. Your fund balance actually grew by $667,000. Net of your encumbrances of $564, you had a net favorable budgetary variance of $1.1 million. Okay.
Good job, Budget Director.
Yeah,
How
nice.
is the department heads that team?
And
Mr. Controller. Thank you.
I've used up
Welcome,
my allotted time,
Thank you.
so I will.
I just want to mention something because, the mayor proposed his budget on Monday and there was a lot of press activity about it. And so we heard as to what the surplus was. So if you look down at the bottom of that page 58, the third line from the bottom, you see that it appears that we had a surplus for the year of $667,000. That isn't quite accurate. We have what we call encumbrances, which is a new column that we added this year. And those are for those things, like I'll give you a great example, the bathrooms. Bathrooms are about $225,000. We started the bathrooms in the previous year, so we carry the budget over even though we haven't written the checks. So it's those projects that we're in the middle of. So you simply subtract that from that. And so our actual expected surplus for the year is slightly over $100,000.
So can I just clarify on that? So you're saying that when the bathrooms get finished, even though they'll get finished in 2020, we'll be paying for them as though they came out of the
Exactly.
last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, okay, that makes sense, thank you.
So when you look at this, you compare it to what the mayor's proposal was, it looks very different, but the numbers all tie in. So if you have any questions, please find the controller or myself, I'm happy to answer them.
Great job, guys. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Things are good.
Thank you.
Alan, thanks very much.
Thank you, sure thing.
Thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned. Second?
Yeah, you should all have a copy if anybody.
Anybody opposed?
You should have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Lemetico, DeBrango, Galimi, 9 present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a property in the public hearing this evening, although there is no one signed up to speak on behalf of that property. It's parcel 318-48-3-85-3 Warren Street. There's no one signed up to speak on behalf of that, so the public hearing is now closed. Do we have a motion to remove ordinance 2, the sale of parcel 318-48385-3 Warren Street from commission, or from committee? Sorry, thank you. Do we have a second? We have a second from Burmaster. Any opposed? Okay. Ordinance 2 is the sale of parcel 318-48-3-85-3 Warren Street to Compassion Coalition in the amount of $500 annually. It's actually a lease. This is not proper there. Okay. $500 annually for 30 years by the Urban Renewal Agency. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
Thank you. Next order of business is public comment period. We have 11 people signed up to speak. Everyone will receive roughly 2.7 minutes. I will be keeping time. First speaker this evening is Steve Keblish. Please come forward.
These are the new public comment rules?
Those are the new ones. Just hold on.
I
Just
haven't
one
had a
moment
chance to
here.
read them all yet,
Okay.
but I don't want to take the
Stop
total
much.
time to read them.
Okay. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. It was at the podium where the sign-up sheet was, and it's also on that podium there. Are you in agreement with this?
I will abide to them to the best of my ability.
Please state your name, and you'll have roughly just over 2.5 minutes.
Roger.
Thanks.
Okay. Steve Keblish. I come before the council tonight to speak in opposition to the proposal to change our committee system. A one-size-fits-all model for the committees is not prudent and may restrict the ability and the agility of the council to establish new standing committees or other ad hoc committees. Conversations will be limited to the collective patience and attention span of a majority of any given committee. Opportunities for outside input will be restricted by the time needed to cater to 9 members instead of a more focused and small group. And the inefficient use of council members' time to tackle issues collectively rather than separating out our council by their passion or by their ability or by their given expertise will be limited by this change. But ultimately, the biggest problem with this change is the fact that rather than tackling the many problems that our city has, whether it's poverty, violence, an inadequate public transit system, flooding, ever-increasing taxes, all the other problems that we face socially, economically in the city, that rather than tackling those issues, we're trying to tackle a perceived inefficiency in our committee system. We need to tackle those problems first. We need to seize the opportunities we have before us as a community and not look to be seizing opportunities to either limit the amount of input the public can put into our problems, or especially the ability of the council to tackle the important problems that we face as a community. So I would hope that the council, if they're going to make any actions on committees, take actions that make the process more robust, more responsive, give more opportunities for people and their council people to work together to solve problems. Make that the primary focus, not this efficiency where we may have to encumber our city officials to come to more than one meeting or whatnot. That's not the priorities of this community, and I hope that the council recognizes that. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Barry? The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name, and I will start the clock.
Diane Barry, Utica, New York. I repeat my previous comments to retain the public comment period. Furthermore, I charge you with your responsibility to make the public aware of all meetings, including committee meetings, and on your website, which currently shows a completely blank calendar except for the block for today is colored blue. And to post agendas and propose legislation in a timely fashion. Good legislature must be open and provide information on agendas and proceedings. I urge the council to retain the committee structure, which is a common practice of all legislative bodies in the United States, to ensure research and deliberation to efficiently create good legislation, and everything Steve said. And as to this ill-conceived resolution against the much-needed New York State bail reform laws, shame on you. A vote for this panders to the self-serving fear-mongering of those who incarcerate and prosecute. For far too long, we have kept people in jail while awaiting their day in court because they cannot afford to ransom their way out as the wealthy can. Do you think a wealthy person who is arrested should be let out and a person with not enough money or property should languish in jail and lose their home, their possessions, their job, their family, and in many cases, even their very identity because all their identity papers have been stolen? And that their families should suffer due to these losses? Because that is what has been happening. The impact of cash bail in our communities, especially low income and those most heavily impacted by policing, has been terrible. It has contributed to the U.S. being a country that has a higher percentage of people incarcerated than any other country in the world, and that 70% of the people in jail, 70% are not convicted of any crime. In places where bail reform has been put in place, there has not been explosions of crime, and people still show up for their court dates. Extensive research has been done recommending this reform. Look at the facts, stand up to the fear-mongering, do your job, help communities thrive instead of supporting this cash bail injustice that disrupts people's lives in their communities. I have a copy for the clerk. I also have a copy that includes references to all the state statistics that I have stated and has a reference to the extensive research that's been done by the NYCLU if any of you are at all interested in the facts instead of the fear-mongering. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Andreatta, please come up.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Sure.
She just flipped us the bird. All right, I would like her not to be let in this building
Okay,
anymore.
she was done and walking away. I didn't
Well, no,
see it.
but
I
I've
was just
seen it.
calling. Oh,
And,
I was,
and that's ridiculous, all right?
All right,
Have
thanks.
a little decorum here. You should be ashamed of yourself,
right.
okay? Grow up. Yeah, and I think you should leave. I think we should ask her to leave.
hold-
You don't do that in this, you don't
if
do
the
that
council
here.
would like to make a
You don't do that
motion,
here.
if the
All right,
council
you
would like
can
to make a
say
motion to
anything you
request
want.
something.
You
Sure,
don't
the
flip
First
your bird to us.
Amendment.
You act like a
Mr.
grown-up.
Mr. Lemetico. Councilman,
I'd like to make a motion.
what is your motion?
I'd like to make a motion to have her removed for what she did, okay?
We have a second to the motion.
Why are we making the decision? It's up to you.
Well, no,
It's up to you.
listen. First off, hold on a moment. What I need to clear up is something else up here, because there's a reason I couldn't listen to what was going on there, all right?
It doesn't need to have all of that. If the motion is on the floor, Mr. President, let us all vote on it.
I need to speak with the people up here.
Just admit it to her.
Are you, no, I mean, you're all set with everything you were asking? Okay. Yes, all right, but make sure none of that's going on here, so I can figure out what's going on. Thank you. I know. Okay. What I was talking to Judge Garamone about was just what was going on in the background up here. It was not this. I am the chair, and I don't believe that I can kick somebody out. If I could have paid attention to what was going on, I was listening, but I was also making sure that notes were being taken because we don't have a deputy clerk, and the judge was also requesting legislation.
She just
If
admitted
she-
to it.
If she saw it, that's fine. Or if we saw it, but her time is up, okay? You can't kick her out of the room. She's done. The next speaker is going to speak. All right. Christina Adriata. Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name, and you'll have roughly 2.5 minutes.
My name's Christina Andreatta.
The motion was out of order. All right. You may begin. Thank you.
Utica has an incredibly high poverty rate. More than half of all the people, all of us, the people that you collectively represent, live at or below the poverty line. Poor people cannot afford to pay bail when we are accused of crimes. We get locked up in cages waiting to see the judge. Sometimes we lose jobs if we can't show up to work because we're locked in cages waiting to see the judge. So we lose jobs. You lose your job, you can't pay your rent or your mortgage, you might lose your home, your family, your scholarship. And all the worse these losses are when half of the time when you see the judge, you're eventually found innocent. The bail reform that happened at the state level finally corrected a massive historic wrong and leveled the playing field between rich and poor. It means that for low-level, non-violent offenses, things like stealing a backpack or a pair of shoes or failing to pay a ticket, you are no longer locked in a cage. You are afforded the same luxury as the rich in that you can go home to your family and your job and your children and come back for your day in court. It's a disservice to so many of us that you collectively represent to call for the reinstatement of inequality into our justice system. And more than just inequality, it's racially unjust. I heard one council member tonight saying he wanted to see the inclusion of dangerousness in these state-level reforms. We have seen what happens in other states, Councilmember Lometico, when they include dangerousness in their laws. What we see, and there are numerous statistic studies to prove this, is we see racial bias because our racialized culture continues to perpetuate the false notion that black people are somehow more dangerous than white people, despite the fact that black and
Why are we
white
talking about
people
black people
commit
here?
crimes
This
at
is
the
across
same
the
time.
board.
Councilman,
This is
I'm
across
telling
the
you
board.
the
Councilman-
impact of what
It has
happened.
nothing to do with
Christina,
black and white.
Christina.
It's as if you break the
This is
law,
my
you should go to
time.
jail.
Christina, I'll pause the time for a moment. Listen, Councilman Lometico, you all passed new rules of public comment. I am upholding the rules. She
You
didn't
you
say
didn't
anything.
hold it, you should have kicked her out of the room.
She said nothing. She just said nothing that was in violation of
said
these
black
rules.
people.
Now, I will continue the time. Christina, please
Christina, I
continue.
apologize, I'll let you continue talking, thank you.
The biased and extremist language of this resolution matches that we have seen circulated in right-wing extremist Facebook groups. And I would really like to know which one of you submitted this draft to the council. Shame on you. Shame on you for proposing that that half of those you represent should be locked in jail awaiting trial. Contrary to the deliberate right-wing misinformation campaign, crime has not increased and people are returning to court. The reforms are working. Stop giving in to the fear-mongering and be better for all of us that you represent.
Miss Adriata, that is your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay Bonanza, if you could please come forward. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
I am.
Thank you. Please state your name, and you'll have about 2.7 minutes.
Lindsay Bonanza. I think that tonight what we've seen is a perfect example of why we need a more robust government here in Utica. I think that we have a lot of well-meaning individuals that live here. We have folks that have taken time out of their night to stand in the back of the room with their opinion. And I think that to assume that the 10 of you in this room know more than the crowd of people that are out there is arrogant and disrespectful and rude. At the same time, I also believe that we do all share this community together, and we don't come together enough. Instead, we're sitting here arguing over someone's right to express her distrust and misgivings about how she feels things are going on in this city. We're yelling at a young lady who had nothing but, criticism of a current legislation that sits in front of this council. And I think that when we argue over those things, instead of coming together and having a meaningful conversation, that we lose sight of what's important. What is important? Finding out what's going to best serve our community. That's what's important. Jack, I see where you're coming from. I work the line you work. I totally understand why you would have an opinion that way. And I have to be honest with you, I agree with some of how you feel. But I also think that shutting somebody out like me, who has really good knowledge and has a lot of experience in that area, instead of inviting me in, would not be the way to go. And I think that that's just where we need to be. And I respect you, Jack, and I respect the work you did your entire career, as I know you respect the work I do every day. So I think we all need to respect each other and understand that the bits of knowledge that we share with each other all has a place and all has an importance. Thank you.
Gail LaSalle, please come forward.
Good evening.
Mr. LaSalle, the Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. Will you abide by this?
Yes, I will abide by it.
State your name and you can begin. Thank you.
Al LaSalle. I reside here in God's country, Utica, New York. Have for approximately 82 years. The meeting tonight is really going beautiful. Keep the reform going. The people that are here in the audience, hundreds in attendance, thousands at home, watching on their TV. They're at the right channel because they're watching us. And we have to deliver for the people of our city. I agree, if you're going to hand out jobs pertaining to city government and city stuff, it should be employee residents. I now want to thank the fire department. Chief, you've had a big burn up. You guys are going day and night, night and day. You're doing a tremendous job. Thank you very, very much. Keep up the good work. May the Lord protect you and our men. We have a long way to go. Last week, as I said, I'm hoping and praying that this council will be better than the last. And I gave my reasons why. When you have something, let's vote independently. Forget it when you go to vote. Forget this Democrat, Republican, independent lines. Vote as a group, one group. I don't know what to call you, but you can all vote together and, forget, as I said, forget the political parties. These homes that we're selling, I hope that they bring people in, college students, etc., dorms for the kids. We have quite a few properties that have been going every meeting. Again, let's keep up the good work.
You have about 15 seconds, Mr. LaSalle.
616.
But you have about 15 seconds. Thank you.
15. Oh, okay.
Thanks.
My name is Al LaSalle. I want to thank you one and all. To the people in the audience, God bless you and thank you. God bless your families. To our council, stay strong. As I said, forget when you come through these doors, forget Democrat, forget the Republican. Let's vote as one team and one way. I thank the Common Council. God bless you. May the Lord bless our city. May the Lord bless us one and all. Thank you again.
Thank you. Freddie Hamilton, if you could please come forward. Ms. Hamilton, the Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and you may begin.
Freddie Hamilton. Good evening. As the city of Utica prepares its 2020-21 budget and the new CDBG funding year begins, there are two issues that I would like to address this evening concerning the Community Development Block Grant funding. I think there needs to be more transparency and broader involvement in decisions made about the CDBG funding. I urge that the Common Council, which is our legislative body, and other stakeholders take more ownership in assessing the needs of the communities that are a part of the HUD designation. It seems to me that currently there is a disproportionate allocation of the CDBG dollars on capital projects and infrastructure, rather than investing in our neighborhoods and our people. This is an unfair and unjust way to use CDBG funds. And the current survey in preparation for the next 5-year plan, which is, by the way, online, doesn't even begin to ask pertinent questions about the needs of Utica's citizens for whom the funding is supposed to help. I fully understand the pressures of trying to accommodate all of the city's needs with a limited amount of revenues. And I understand that through its austerity budgeting, the current administration is credited for bringing the city back from the brink of financial disaster. So this is in no way an attempt to disparage the administration's efforts. However, when CDBG funds are used arbitrarily to bridge funding gaps, to invest in capital projects and infrastructure instead of the people, it leaves the poor and marginalized people who are supposed to benefit from those dollars in a perpetual state of despair. Utica is indeed a tale of two cities. It's the one touted by the administration, the power brokers, and those who are in the prosperity loop as the greatest little city in upstate New York, and in some ways it is. But as soon as we begin to scratch the surface, we find the other Utica. This Utica has a 40% poverty rate among African Americans and poor whites, substandard housing stock owned by absentee landlords or landlords who are well connected to the establishment and judicial system, so that their tenants are evicted as soon as they complain against them with codes. We find homeless, mentally ill, and substance abusers congregating on Oneida Street, defecating behind garbage bins, holed up in the public library to escape the elements, and sleeping in the train station and other public spaces. We find at-risk children and youth without adequate programming to help them to break the cycle of generational poverty and ignorance and live up to our full potential. These issues need to be addressed in a more substantial way. I believe that we should all work together to make Utica the greatest little city in upstate New York for all of its inhabitants, and CDBG funds should certainly be a part of that solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Sinnott. Ms. Sinnott, the Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I read it.
Please state your name and you may begin.
I'm Kathy Sinnott, and I came here tonight to the council meeting because I was so moved when I attended the community meeting Wednesday, January 22nd at the community church. And it was a community meeting I learned about only from reading the Utica OD. And I was so moved by the pain in that room and by the love. I subsequently had met with Chief Mark Williams, and I don't know if he has a representative here, but, oh good, hi. There was no anger, there was more pain. And many people of all ages, I just wanted to let you know who was there and what happened. It wasn't dissing Utica or anger or resentment about the police. There was just a huge range of people, and people spoke from their hearts what they wanted and felt that would do good for the city. Many of us, like myself, are fairly naive. We don't know. But something struck me. Trust, and how the hell do you, I'm sorry, I read the rules. How the heck do you build, I did read the rules. Do you build trust? You know, we need to come together. Anthony Brandizzi's, please don't let me talk too much.
You've got about 45 seconds.
Okay,
so,
okay,
I mean,
we're
you're fine.
okay.
Yeah.
Anthony Brandizzi's representative was there, and he was remarkable in that he was completely silent. He didn't call attention to himself. He took notes. At the end, I asked who he was. But there was a very well-dressed man in a three-quarter tan coat who stood, and the kids were there. And he said, I grew up just like you. A single mother, a mom, no dad. Don't throw your life away. He spoke twice, and he said the same thing. You could just see, with so much going against people. And we know about racism in this country. We know about, it was written in the Constitution, and we need better history education. And I don't want to go off on this, but there was so many. The first person who spoke, just for an example, that was a young girl, and she said, respect, respect. We got to talk to each other. We got to learn how to talk to each other, and we can't settle things with violence and the way things are going.
Ms. Senate?
Okay,
That is time, yeah.
Okay, you get the message.
Thank you. Bill True, if you could please come up. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rules. Are you in agreement with this?
I am, sir.
Thank you. Please state your name and you may begin.
Good evening. I am Bill True, lifelong resident of Utica. Members of the Utica Common Council, City Administration, ladies and gentlemen in attendance, friends and families at home. As I look around, I notice we live in a very diverse community. And that's one of the best things I like about living in the city of Utica. And that being said, I would like for all of us to think about something for a moment. Even though we might not be biologically related, we all belong to the same spiritual family. And that means that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless of race, creed, or national origin. Violence affects us all, whether we are white or black, rich or poor, young and old. When something happens to one of our brothers or sisters through acts of violence, we too feel that pain. And one statistic is one too many. I want all of us, along with our city government, our Utica Police Department, and our district attorney's office, to help us stand up for peace and help continue to make this a non-violent community. Let us all make a connection and have a much-needed dialogue on these issues. Let us find ways to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this community. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and pray for our families, our community, and our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jalen Barton, if you could please come forward. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You may begin after you state your name.
My name is Jaylon Barton, and I'd like to be talking about the gun violence in this community. I recently moved here with my sister to get away from gun violence that's been happening from where I live at. And now that I am in Utica and it's the same way, I don't feel safe walking around the streets. And as me, as a black man, I don't feel safe around any Utica police. I feel like guns period should be like buying a car, because when you buy a car they have to check your background, check your credit. I think you should do that also for people with guns, because you never know who's just gonna walk in there, because people who have money, they're just gonna buy and do crazy things. So I think you should do that. Also, the military grade rifles used in many mass shootings may dominate the political debate, but they account for less than 5% of homicides. I think that these laws that allow other people to wrongly disregard the fact that us, the people, and us children my age are also curious and human, and we think, and the stuff that we see on TV, the stuff that we see other people do, we want to follow that and want to be like that. And I also think that we should end legal immunities for gun manufacturers, because there are too many industries where they make guns, and I think that we should at least close down or shut down some of them, because they're not being held accountable for the many lives that guns have used to take people's lives, and no one's accounting for that. As it states that the federal law offers the gun industry's extraordinary protection. In 2005, Congress passed the Protection of Law Commenced in Arms, at which shield gun manufacturers and sellers from civil claims brought by victims of gun violence. And I think it's unfair. I think they should be held accountable. They should see what they are doing by making these guns. Thank you.
Thank you. Amos Williams, if you could please come up. Amos Williams. Thank you. Okay. Donna Beckett, if you could please come forward. Ms. Beckett's our final speaker this evening. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name and you may begin.
My name is Donna Beckett, and I would like to say hello to everyone. I really am so happy to see so many people turn out. I've passed out, they're passing around to council members. I'm here because I'm very much involved in No Hospital Downtown, have been for 4.5 years, hard to believe. And I often bring things. I've been coming to these meetings for 3 years. So this is wonderful. And I come here not just because of No Hospital Downtown. I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life. So that's part of it. And I know both sides of the story of the hospital downtown or not. So anyway, I wanted to mention that what I passed out was the press release regarding No Hospital Downtown and the plaintiffs winning the ruling back in December, and some additional information. I also included an article that Pete Bianco wrote regarding the court situation, and it was published in the Utica Phoenix. So each member has it, but also you too. I can believe.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to mention was that I wanted to agree with Freddie about the community block grant money, because after coming to these meetings for 3 years, I was so surprised at how it was given out, and disappointment, terrible disappointment. So I also wanted to mention about what Lindsay said about the fact that it's not an easy job, and we know that at council people it's not an easy thing to be, but to rely on other people and not to understand that the people of Utica are intelligent, they know what they're saying, they know what they need, and yes, there are very different opinions. So, but anyway, that's all I wanted to say, so thank you.
Thank you. We have no guests this evening. Do we have a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes? We have a motion from Councilman Miola. Who's the second? McNeil. Any opposed to reading the minutes, or dispensing with the reading of the minutes? All right, we have one opposed. Thank you. Qualify your vote?
Okay, I'll just keep this very brief. Is that on? Is that on? I said the same thing last time. I haven't seen any actual minutes. I've seen a model of what minutes will be like. I think that's great. We're clearly heading in the right direction. There are no minutes that have been made available to the public, and there are no actual minutes before me in my packet. I know that the clerk is working towards a good model of minutes, and I appreciate her efforts, and I know that there's a lot to get up to speed. But until I actually have minutes before me, I can't in good conscience vote to waive the reading of something that doesn't exist. It's just too Orwellian for me.
Okay. Do we have, would you like to,
I think that now is the time.
well, are you addressing the minutes?
Yes, I have.
The minutes?
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay, the minutes.
Yeah.
All right, the minutes. Yeah, he's gonna turn. Okay.
Councilperson Fred brought up the matter of the minutes. And she's absolutely right. That Section 106 of the Open Meetings Law does provide for minutes. So she's correct. Now, it had been the history that the minutes were recorded in a book, and everything that has happened in the Common Council, for as long as I can remember, is in a book. And every meeting and every session of Common Council is recorded that way. And the past was that everything that happens in this meeting that is resolutions and ordinances is recorded, and the votes of the people are registered and who they are. Now that, the past, and I think today, is kept in a packet for anyone to come and read what happened at the meeting, and that has always sufficed. If you want to do something more formal than that, there are two considerations. One is cost, and the other is method. But I wanted to say publicly that the councilperson is absolutely correct when she says that the law does provide for minutes, and also explain how it was done in the past, so history precedes the actual performance. And so I wanted every one of you to know that I did not ignore her bringing that up. I went to the library, the law library, and spent some time on it today, because I wanted to make sure that in case she brought it up tonight, that I was prepared to support her. And I think we have to figure out, if you want to, maybe a different method of doing it, and we can discuss that at some later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and then I would like just to add to what the judge was stating, that the new clerk and I were discussing this, and once we have a deputy clerk, we will be, in addition to what has historically been done and sufficed, be formalizing the minutes separately from that, so that they can be provided, and you can read them at the meeting if you'd like. Okay? Thank you. All right. Do we have communications from the mayor?
There are no communications.
All right, well, the mayor did present the budget, which was a pretty big communication to ENA, and I'll state that they did that on time. So just want to acknowledge that. Moving on. Do we have any reports from the city officers at this time? Anything? Thank you very much. Petitions, remonstrances, and appeals. First District, Councilmember and Majority Leader Maria McNeil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really quick, I just wanted to remind everybody that the next East Utica Concerned Citizens meeting will be on March 6th. It is always the first Monday of every month at 6:30 at Mount Carmel Church. If anyone has any questions, they can contact me regarding it, or Lucretia Hunt. And
our guest speaker will be talking about the $10 million DRI that was awarded to the city of Utica. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Second District, Councilmember Robert Burmaster. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing at this time to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Third District, Councilmember Celeste Friend.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to report on some sort of similar to what Councilwoman McNeil was saying. I want to remind everybody about the SUNA meeting, the South Utica Neighborhood Association meeting, which takes place always on the second Monday of each month at 6 o'clock at the Notre Dame Elementary School at 11 Barton Ave. So that's this coming Monday. I also want to remind everybody that I hold regular constituent hours on the first, I want to get this right, on the first, second, fourth, and the occasional fifth Wednesday of the month, Tuesday. I do that on Tuesdays. I do it every Tuesday except for the third, because on the third Tuesday of the month I've been going to the Sequoia Creek Basin Intermunicipal Commission. So I hold those from 4 to 6 at the Other Side Gallery, which is next door to Cafe Domenico. Again, the first, the second, the fourth, and the fifth Tuesday of every month. I'm always at SUNA. I'm always here. But I do have a special meeting coming up that I want to report on. That's this coming Tuesday at the Community Foundation from 7 to 9. And it's on flooding. I had a meeting last week, a flooding meeting in which I had an expert come in and explain the basics of hydrology so that we can sort of understand why it floods when it floods. And then the next step is I'm holding a meeting on February 11th with various local officials from Anthony Brindisi's office, from the County Planning Office, from Assemblywoman Butenshawn's office, from the City Engineer's office. So I have a number of officials coming in to explain to us the various things that people are doing, because there's a lot of people working hard to both reduce the likelihood of flooding, but also to mitigate the harm when it does flood. So that's from 7 to 9 at the Community Foundation. Big shout out to the Community Foundation for repeatedly giving me a very nice room to hold these meetings. And then on February 24th, I'm going to be holding my first town hall, and I'll have more to say about that at the next council meeting. That's all I have. If anybody is interested in that kind of stuff, I have little flyers to pass out that has all those dates on it, and I will have a new flyer at the first meeting of each month. I'll always have this flyer, and everybody is welcome to take one. Thank you.
Fourth District, Councilmember Frank Miola, President Pro Temp.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll start with the good news. Members of the council, in the past, we used to have our packages full with properties being sold. If you look recently, we're only selling 1 or 2 of them. That's a good thing, because talking to Gene Allen today, Urban Renewal Properties, he doesn't have any. No homes, no houses to sell yet. So we're hoping to, he says, I'm hoping to replenish the stock sometime soon. But it's good news that he's selling these properties and getting them back on the tax roll that fast. And the council should be very, very happy with that also. That good news with Gene today was excellent. Also, the auctions that Gene Allen also has for those properties. The properties are being sold very quickly and for very good money. So our housing stock is going up. So it looks like people want to really come live in the city of Utica. Excellent news for all of us here. Now comes the bad news. Of course, guys, we know that the Board of E&A has the budget right now, and it's moving to the council. So we're going to have some budget meetings coming up, and we pack them pretty heavy. We're going to look at the wish list for all our department heads, see what they have on the table, compare what the mayor has, and we're going to go from there. So get ready to buckle down, bring your calculators, bring your pens, your whiteout pens, whatever you got, because we have a lot of budget lines to go through, and I hope everybody's here to help out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fifth District, Councilmember Delvin Moody, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for this time. There is a few things that I do want to address tonight. Particularly, the first thing is about gun violence and the issues that have been facing that in the community. A few weeks ago, we had a fantastic meeting at Cornerstone Church there on Plant Street, where we were able to provide a community response and really have a meeting to figure out what the community thought would be a good solution to the issues that we've been seeing. Three things really arose from that meeting. The first was that there needs to be an increased engagement of police with the community. The community really wanted to see that. We should have more mentorship opportunities, and that there is a desperate need for another community center in the city of Utica, New York. When we asked the kids and the young folks that were in the room, they said that there are not many activities for them to do. And I tend to agree with them. In the city, there are a lot of things happening, but we can increase our recreational activities on a municipal level for young people in this city. I want to also address the other thing that has come up tonight in terms of bail reform, right? And I know folks have rallied here because of the prospect of that legislation, right? It going out that this council was going to vote on that resolution tonight, right? So I want to first explain that that resolution is not something that is before the council, right? But that resolution was something being introduced for consideration in the Public Safety Committee. So that's the first thing to note. So it wasn't done without the gaze of the community input. The other aspect that I want to make clear now is that at any point would I ever vote to support such a resolution coming from this council. The first thing is that you have to understand, and I want to make comment to that because it was brought up tonight in terms of it being a black or white issue. It is not. In terms of it being a public safety issue, it is. But I don't want any member of this council, and I did not want to say anything to that extent, but I don't want any member of this council to disregard the historical and societal history that is evident in the criminal justice process of this nation. To disregard the years of systemic oppression that have been perpetuated through the 13th Amendment and other aspects of both federal and state legislation, I think is a disservice to the residents of this community. And so I know that emotions can be high, but I don't want anyone to make a comment as if to deny the proliferation of the amounts of numbers of African Americans and people of color that have been put in jail disproportionately to other residents across this nation. That's a big distinction that I must make tonight. The other thing I will say is in terms of the committee process, folks have talked about that. I will leave my comments for later if such a resolution shall arise. But I do have concern about eliminating the specifics of committees and going to a committee of the whole in terms of structure, not in terms of the principle of meeting as a committee as a whole, but in terms of structuring it as such. And I just want to further comment on former Councilwoman Hamilton's point about CDBG funding. I do think that we should revert back to a more participatory process in CDBG funding and how that money is lent out. I know that in the past there was an advisory board of sorts, and I don't know if that's the solution, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that I do hear the concern about having more participation from the community in how CDBG money is spent and distributed. That's it.
Thank you. Sixth District, Councilmember Joseph Beatrice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first thing I'd want to say is I want to remind everybody that in North Utica, the fourth Monday of every month, we have our meetings. And prior to our meeting our meetings are 6:30, and prior to our meeting at 6 o'clock, I am there to take any needs and concerns and meet any of my people that need to, want to talk to me or see anything. We had our first meeting last month, and it was quite successful, and I worked on quite a bit of things to get that done already. The next thing I'd like to do is thank my fellow council people. So we've been on for 6 weeks now, and every one of you has been there for me. If I needed anything, pointed me in the right direction. Councilman DeBrango, I want to thank you very much for calling the public safety meeting tonight, and Chief Williams and Deputy Chief Noonan for coming with my concerns. Okay, thank you for my
Councilman Beatrice, you
concern.
still have the floor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you for my concerns. And, you know, speaking on that, it's great to know that people are out there to help, okay? And that's all I wanted to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman at Large, Jack Lemetico, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Christine, I'm sorry I yelled during your comment, and I shouldn't have done that. But you got to understand how I feel about it. I've been well, and I'll explain. Thank you. I've been a parole officer for close to 25 years, okay? I'm looking at the crime as compared to the first of the year. As of this month, our crime has gone up in the city of Utica 44%. All right, these are figures I have. If you want to talk figures, I got figures from the police department today. Okay. Aggravated assault's up 27%. Burglary's up 21%. Larcenies are up 53%. I pulled New York City's crime and how they're doing this the first month of the year. All right, and I'll get to you on this, and I'll explain to you why I'm talking about this. New York City, total crime is up 16.9%. Robberies are up 36.8%. Burglaries up 26.6%. Grand larcenies up 10.7%. Felonies are up 7.9%. Auto thefts are up 72.5%. Shooting victims are up 41%. Shooting is 28.1%. That's right, they weren't in jail. What I found, and let me say, I'm not looking to get rid of this bail reform. I think over the years there have been some inconsistencies, because I've been out there and I've seen it. So I can understand why people have problems with the way the current old law was. It's just that on this new current law, it was good intentions, but it was bad legislation. What it totally did, folks, is it took all the power away from the judges. The judges typically, what they used to do is they would look, when somebody would come in, and they would look at their record. Okay, is this the first time this person's been arrested for this particular crime? Right. What took place in this crime within this assault third? You know, with an assault third, there's huge left and right boundaries on what assault third takes place. The judge can't even look at that anymore. So all we're asking is the state legislator, once again, the old law I didn't agree with, but the new law has just created terrible issues for us. We want them to go back, take a look at what's working and what's not working. Typically, what's happening is that, you know, we're putting the same people back on the street that keep creating the same crimes over and over again. My job in Cornhill and in West Utica and in East Utica and South Utica was to protect the public, all right? We're protecting the public by taking these continual offenders off the street. And that's all I'm asking them to take a look at. Take a look at their record. Take a look at what the recidivism is, how many times they've been doing this. We've had people being released the very next day committing these same crimes. I'm not saying abolish the law, but I'm saying strengthen the law, fix it. Anytime something comes out, you need to make some adjustments on it. So am I against it the way it is? Absolutely. Because it's a cookie cutter law right now. The judges who we voted in to protect us and to use their good decision-making ability on every individual case has totally been taken away from us. They have no say in it anymore. And for our legislator to do that, that was incorrect. Do we need to fix it? Yes. Do we need to get rid of it all? No. I'm just asking for everybody to use a little common sense on this. So I apologize again, but I feel very strongly about this because my job was to protect the public, is to protect this little Jalen out there from all these shootings that are going on. Because it's the same people that get released are the ones that are doing the shooting again. And I've seen it. And I've seen it. Trust me, I've seen it. And I'm just not blowing smoke. I've seen it.
Councilman Lemetico is addressing the council as a whole.
I've seen it. So yeah, I do have experience, and it's coming from experience. And I'm protecting the people of Cornhill. I'm protecting the people that aren't breaking the law. And I'm trying to put the people that are breaking the law over and over again, put them where they belong and get them fixed, all right? Once again, thank you very much.
Councilman, we set? Thank you. Councilman at Large Frank DeBrango, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did sponsor this legislation regarding bail reform. And there was a couple issues that I was concerned about. I am not against bail reform. I understand the rich, they can afford bail money. The poor can't afford bail money. So I understand that. But I think the issues that have arose was, one, if you get caught driving without a license and you get arrested and you go in front of a judge, they release you. If you get caught raping a female or raping somebody and you go in front of a judge, you get released. Is that fair? That is not fair. I think the fair part would be that.
Councilman, just hang on just one second. I just want to note that during remonstrances, just as with public comment, the council members can address their thoughts. That's why it's called petitions, remonstrances, and appeals. The comments are to the council as a whole, and I would appreciate the same consideration for the councilman. Thank you. As you were saying,
You
Councilman.
get caught child prostitution, you go in front of a judge, you get released. It shouldn't be the same as driving without a license. What I'm saying is they have to amend some of the laws. That's all I'm saying. And I had a quote from the Governor Cuomo. He said, "This is a work in progress." He understands. I think we all understand. Another quote from the Attorney General, Letitia James. She suggested that the new laws be revisited. So I think what they have to do, our government, state government, is sit down with police agencies, with the district attorneys, and find out what laws they should write up as far as letting people go back out on the street. Because you can't let somebody go back out on the street when you rape somebody and they're out in 2 hours, and that victim's got to worry about what's going to happen. So this is something that is not right. It's not fair. On a good note, I know it's Black History Month, and I just want to congratulate Delvin when he was elected in November. He made history as the youngest elected official in New York State. So I do want to congratulate him on that. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to reserve my time for another time. Do we have any miscellaneous communications?
There are no miscellaneous communications.
Thank you very much. Do we have anything to report from the committee meeting earlier and/or any legislation that is to be pulled from committee at this time?
Mr. President, I move to pull the resolution reaffirming that proposed reconstruction and improvement of the city sewer system is a type 2 action for purpose of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act.
Is there a second? Okay, Lemetico is the second. Any opposed to pulling that legislation? You read the title, so I'll read the legislation. It's been removed from committee. Whereas the Common Council of the City of Utica, Oneida County, New York, the city, is considering undertaking the reconstruction and improvement of the city sewer system, including sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and surface drainage facilities, including the acquisition of land or rights in land and original furnishings, equipment, machinery, or apparatus required in connection therewith, referenced as CSO to control Project C1, the project, and whereas pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR Act, and the regulations adopted pursuant thereto by the Department of Environmental Conservation of the State of New York, being 6 NYCRR Part 617, as amended the regulations, the city desires to comply with the SEQR Act and the regulations with respect to the project. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Common Council of the City of Utica, New York, as follows. 1, the project as revised consists of construction or expansion of a primary or accessory non-residential structure or facility involving less than 4,000 square feet of gross floor area and not involving a change in zoning or a use variance and consistent with local land use controls, but not radio communication or microwave transmission facilities. Therefore, the revised project is a Type 2 action under 6 NYC RR 617.5C7, and no further action under the SECRA Act, the regulation is required. This resolution will take effect immediately. Your votes.
Eight yeas adopted.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I move to pull the resolution of the Common Council of the City of Utica approving the acquisition of certain real property and establishing a public hearing regarding the disposition of said real property.
Is there a second? Lemetico's the second. Any opposed? It's been pulled from the Economic Development Committee. Corporation Counsel, is there something I need to note?
Before we vote on it, we need to change the title to calling for a public hearing.
So would you like to make a motion to strike and establishing a public hearing regarding the disposition of said real property?
Correct,
Is that what we need to call for?
right?
Councilman
Yes.
Miola, would you like to offer that motion? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Clerk, have you made the amendments on the legislation? Thank you. Okay, so the title now reads, Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Utica approving the acquisition of certain real property. Whereas the City of Utica Harbor Point redevelopment project consists of a proposed redevelopment of approximately 148 acres of land located within the City of Utica's inner harbor to the Erie Canal and the Mohawk River within the City of Utica, Oneida County, New York. And whereas the project is being undertaken by the Utica Harbor Point Development Corporation in partnership with the city, as outlined in the redevelopment master plan that was prepared for the City of Utica Harbor Point area in 2015. Whereas on February 17th, 2016, the city accepted a final generic environmental impact statement for the project as being completed pursuant to the applicable requirements of Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law and the regulations promulgated therein at 6 NYC RR, Part 617. Whereas the city, in partnership with the UHPDC, that's the Harbor Point Development Corporation, has identified certain vacant parcels of land located within the Harbor Point area on Wells Avenue, Utica, New York, and more particularly identified as tax parcel number 306.20-1-8 and 306.20-1-9, collectively as in the legislation, the Wells Avenue parcels, an essential part of real property that must be acquired to implement the master plan and to ultimately undertake the project, whereas consistent with the city 2016 bond ordinance, it was contemplated that the city will obtain title to the Wells Avenue parcels and therefore convey the Wells Avenue parcels to the UHPDC for redevelopment purposes consistent with the master plan for purposes of implementing the project. Whereas by a bond ordinance dated April 14th, 2016, the Common Council of the city authorized the issuance of the city serial bonds in the amount not to exceed $1.5 million to finance the cost of certain capital projects, including the acquisition of the Wells Avenue parcels in connection with the project at the maximum estimated cost of $750,000. Now therefore be it resolved that the council hereby ratifies and confirms all findings and determinations made within the city 2016 bond ordinance, and resolved that the mayor is authorized to enter into contracts with the owners of the Wells Avenue parcels to acquire said parcels consistent with the city 2016 bond ordinance, and resolved that the mayor is authorized to execute any deeds necessary to acquire the Wells Avenue parcels, and be it further resolved that these resolutions shall take effect immediately. Your votes. We did go over that in caucus, pre-meeting conference.
8 yeas adopted.
Anything else this time?
Mr. President, I move to pull Chapter 3-2 Administration, Article 2, Common Council, Division 2, Rules of Order.
Okay. Oh, it's these, yes. Okay. This is the one that sits in the Public Safety, City Charter, and Code Committee? Yes, okay. Is there a second to pull that from committee? We have a second from Councilman Miola. Any opposed to pulling this from committee? Okay, we have 2 opposed. It's the Rules of Order sponsored by council members McNeil and Miola that are in the Public Safety Committee. Yes. Okay. I guess I'm going to read this legislation. Well, I'll summarize.
Sorry, point of inquiry,
Order?
I guess about,
Inquiry?
point of order or point of
Yeah.
inquiry.
Okay.
Don't we in fact have to read it all? What's the method by which we wouldn't read all the legislation?
Well, I'm going to read it all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so Chapter 3-2 Administration, Article 2 Common Council, Division 2 Rules of Order. 3-2-41 Rules Designated, be it resolved, the following rules of order be, and they hereby are designated as the rules of order of the Common Council of the City of Utica for the ensuing 2 years. Before I continue, you noted the vote on the pulling it from committee. Thank you. Section 3-2-41.1, pre-meeting conference / committee of the whole. The members of the Common Council and the President of the Common Council shall meet prior to each regular and special meeting. The meeting shall be chaired by the Majority Leader of the Common Council, who shall endeavor to conduct the meeting so as to not delay the commencement of the regular and/or special meeting set forth herein. B, the pre-meeting conference is for the purpose of discussing and reviewing new legislation that is in committee, and such other matters that the members of the Common Council have determined to require their attention at the time. The pre-meeting conference is advisory in the same manner as committee meetings. The adoption of a resolution, ordinance, or local law, or any amendments thereto may only occur at a regular or special meeting of the Common Council as provided by the Rules of Order, Section 3.002 of the Utica City Charter, and Sections 33 and 34 of the Second Class Cities Law. The chairperson of a designated committee, the title of which set forth herein, shall report upon the status of legislation that has been referred to said committee by the Common Council at a previous meeting. Section 3242, regular meetings. Regular meetings of the Common Council of the City of Utica, New York shall be held in the Common Council chambers in the City Hall at 7 p.m. on the second day of January shall fall. Wait a minute, what happened here? Shall be held in the Common Council chambers in the City Hall at 7 p.m. on the second day of January shall fall on Saturday or Sunday. Then the first regular meeting shall be held on the following day at the same hour or no later than the first Wednesday in January. Therefore, I'm reading this as written, so, that's how it is. Thereafter, all regular meetings will be held on the first and third Wednesday of each month at approximately 7 p.m. During the months of July and August, the regular meetings fixed for the third Wednesday of the month shall be held at the call of the President of the Common Council. The Common Council may adjourn any regularly scheduled meeting of the Council to some later convenient time. Section 3243, special meetings. Special meetings of the Common Council may be called by the President of the Common Council or the majority of its members of the Common Council by causing a written notice thereof, specifying the objects of the meeting, to be served by the clerk upon each member personally, by the police department, and/or by mail or text directed to the member at said member's address and email. Or place of business, that was a period, and then it says, or place of business at least 24 hours before the time fixed for said meeting. The Common Council may, at its regular meeting, give notice of the date and time of the special meeting. Section 3244, public comment period. This piece, I'm just going to buzz through it since we're reading it in its entirety. Whereas democracy relies upon the participation of elected officials and constituents alike at the beginning of each Common Council meeting, the Common Council shall provide 30 minutes of public comment. The time shall be allotted for those members who wish to express their views on anything pertaining to city business. No person or group will be allowed to consume the entire period allotted. The timekeeper shall be the President of the Common Council. No speaker shall receive more than time allotted. If a group appears and it is clear that that group would consume the entire time allotted, then the group is instructed to choose 2 speakers to speak on behalf of their group and be given 4 minutes each. The remaining 22 minutes will be divided equally among the remaining persons who have signed up to speak. The President of the Common Council will preside over the public comment period. The following is prohibited. 1, no speaker shall use profane language. 2, no speaker shall make derogatory, disparaging remarks about elected officials, officials such as department heads and members of the corporation counsel's office, members of the city clerk's office and/or offices and appointees. No person shall attempt to engage the president, members of the council, or to engage in debate. No speaker is allowed to make derogatory, disparaging comments about anyone's race, religion, or orientation. It actually says, or other orientation. No person shall shout, swear, or make threatening remarks that are addressed to anyone, nor will person be allowed to engage in hostile conduct. E, the President of the Common Council has the authority to discontinue or end the time allotted to a speaker who violates one or more of the above rules. Should a person make threatening remarks or act in threatening manner, the President of the Common Council may request that they stop and remove themselves from the podium. In an extreme case, the President may request that said person be removed from the council chambers. A copy of the rules shall be posted at the podium, and each speaker shall attest to having read the rule and will comply with said rules. Quorum, Section 3245, a majority of all the elected council members shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. Order of business. 1, the clerk will call the roll, pledge of allegiance, and moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. 3, public hearings. 4, public comment period. 5, common council guests. 6, reading the minutes of the previous meeting. 7, communications from the mayor to be read by the clerk. 8, reports of the city officers, general call. 9, petitions, remonstrances, and appeals, together with the introduction of any legislation sponsored by a council person to be called by district. 10, introduction of legislation sponsored by the majority and seconded by the minority leader or other member of the Common Council. 11, introduction of legislation by a committee chairman that said chairman offers for adoption. 12, local laws. 13, adjournment. Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole shall consist of the members of the Common Council. That was Section 3247. Section 3248, select committees. The Common Council shall select the title and members of the select committees as set forth herein. The members of the Common Council are members of every select committee and shall be given notice by city clerk, by email or text of every meeting of a committee called by the chairperson. The President of the Common Council shall designate the chairperson of each select committee set forth herein. As a general rule, the Committee of the Whole will only review and deliberate all legislation of the pre-meeting caucus. The majority of the members may call for a committee meeting of the whole at a time and date upon proper notice to all members in the media. Titles of select committees: government relations. There are chairpersons already written in here, so I will be reading the legislation as written. Government relations: Maria McNeil, chairperson. Liaison, controller's office, budget director. Robert Burmaster, chairman. Media, TV, cable, and internet: Celeste Friend, chairperson. Finance budget: Frank Miola, chairman. Codes, neighborhood preservation, and MHA: Delvin Moody, chairman. Public works, transportation: Joe Beatrice, chairman. Parks, youth, recreation, veterans, and seniors: Mark Williamson, chairman. Economic development: Harbor Point, URA, and Duda: Jack Lemetico, chairman. Public safety: police, fire, city code, charter: Frank DeBrango, chairman. Committee member: each member of the Common Council shall be designated as chairman of one entitled selected committee unless otherwise voted by the majority of the Common Council. Clerk, Section 3250, clerk may call to order. In the absence of the president and president pro temp, the majority and the minority leader of the council, in that order, the clerk shall call the council to order, and if quorum is present, the Common Council shall elect one of its members in order set forth above to conduct the council meeting. The member chosen and/or the city clerk, as being last in order, shall conduct the meeting in the same manner as the president of the Common Council. Section 3251, absence of member. A, no member shall be absent from a session of the Common Council before adjournment without leave of the presiding officer. B, member absenteeism. 1, any member who is absent from regularly scheduled meetings on 3 consecutive occasions or absent from 4 meetings out of 6 consecutive occasions without good cause shall be liable to censure by the council and or subject to sanctions by said council. The council shall determine what is good cause at a hearing with the member, with the particular emphasis on medical disability and family emergencies. 3, Any member sanctioned for absenteeism in violation of this subsection shall be liable to a fine in the amount to be determined by the council not to exceed 1/22 of the member's annual gross salary for each missed meeting. 4, the provisions of this subsection and the sanctions herein shall not preclude the council from proceeding with any other remedies or procedures provided in state or local statutes, including those of the New York State Second-Class Cities Law. Section 3252, suspension of the rules. Any rule of the Common Council may at any time be temporarily suspended for special reasons by majority vote of all the members of the council, except when such a suspension is specifically prohibited in any rule. No permanent alteration may be made without notice specifying the object of the change, and such notice of alteration shall be given at a previous meeting. Section 3253, preservation of order. When a member of the Common Council or a department head or any elected official is called to order, he or she shall immediately sit down and cease all verbal communications, and the presiding officer shall pass upon the point of order. B, anyone refusing to cease all verbal communications by the presiding officer shall be deemed to be in contempt of the Common Council and shall be liable to censure by the Common Council. Refusal to vote. Any member refusing the vote on any question unless excused by unanimous consent of the Common Council shall be deemed in contempt of the Council and shall be liable to censure by the Common Council. The request to abstain must have a valid reason for consideration by the Common Council. Reconsideration of a question. After any question is decided by the Common Council, it shall be in order for any member of the Common Council voting in majority only to move its reconsideration at the same meeting. All subsequent meetings, if a motion for reconsideration is last, it shall not be renewed a third time except upon unanimous vote by the members of the Common Council. No question may be received for the remainder of the Common Council member's term if it has been presented and failed to be reconsidered as set forth above. Section 3256, sponsor of actions and presentation. A, all resolutions and ordinances or local laws submitted to the clerk by a member of the Common Council shall be distributed to the members, the president, and the Common Council attorney for review. Any member may request to be a co-sponsor, and any member may move to have the legislation read as sponsored by the entire body. All legislation does not have a specific sponsor and is submitted by the council by various city departments shall have the majority leader and minority leader noted as the sponsor. D, all legislation must be forwarded to the attorney of the Common Council and reviews for legality. Section 3259-1, submission of communications and requests by department heads, exception to the Thursday rule. The members of the Common Council are also governed by the provisions of Section 3259-1 above. All legislation by members of the Common Council shall be submitted no later than the end of the business day on Thursday prior to the regular meeting. The following are exceptions to the Thursday rule. 1, transfers. 2, bond ordinances. 3, special legislation from the law department. 4, resolution and ordinances that are time sensitive. Further, that if legislation is submitted beyond the Thursday prior to the next regular meeting, a motion may be made and seconded requesting that the Thursday rule be waived, and the Thursday rule be waived by an affirmative vote by the majority of the Common Council. Section 3260, special parliamentary rules. When a question is under debate, no motion shall be received, but to adjourn, fix the hour of adjournment, to move the previous question, to lay on the table, to postpone indefinitely, to postpone to a day certain, to commit, to amend. B, each of the several motions set forth above shall have precedence in the order here stated. C, motions to adjourn, to fix the hour adjournment, to move the previous question, and to lay on the table shall be decided without debate and without amendment except for a motion. To fix the hour of adjournment may be amended as to the hour. D, motions to postpone indefinitely shall be amended, and motions to adjourn to a day certain may only be amended as to the time reconvening. Motions to commit may be amended only as to the committee committed, and as to instructions and powers given to the committee. At the time a motion to amend is made, and there shall be allowed only amendments to the original proposition, an amendment to that amendment, and an amendment by way of substitution of the whole original proposition and pending amendments. Section 3261, property, it says property of business. I believe it's supposed to say, what's that? I'm perfectly fine. Yeah, this reads section 3-261, property of business. It's a typo. The priority of business shall be as the common council has set forth herein. Said priority may be changed from time to time by an appropriate motion adopted by the majority of the members of the common council. Section 3262, taking a vote, appeal. Upon any questions before the common council, the chair shall rise in place after stating the question, shall take a vote and declare his judgment as to the result of the vote, subject to appeal by the council. When any appeal shall have been made from any ruling chair, the chair shall submit the following question to the council. Shall the decision of the chair stand as the judgment of the council? B, this question shall be determined by a majority of vote of the council. In the event of the refusal of the chair to entertain such an appeal, the same shall be submitted to the council by the clerk. Previous question. The previous question shall be put as follows. Shall the main question now be put? Until the previous question is decided, all amendments or debates shall be precluded. When on taking the previous question, the council shall decide that the main question shall now be put. The main question shall be considered as still remaining under debate. The main question shall be on the passage of the ordinance, resolution, or other matter under consideration, but when amendments are pending, the question shall first be taken on such amendments in their order. Section 3264, division of question. If the question contains several distinct and divisible propositions, any member may have the same divided, but a motion to strike out and insert shall not be divisible under this rule. Withdrawal of a motion, section 3265. Any motion may be withdrawn by the mover before it is decided and amended. But in such case, any member renew the motion at any time. Section 3266, recognition of members by chair required. Every member rising to debate, give a notice, make a motion, report, or present any paper shall first address the chair and shall not proceed further until audibly recognized by the chair. Section 3267, use of Robert's Rules of Order. The rules of parliamentary practice contained in the Robert's Rules of Order, revised for deliberative assemblies, shall govern the common council in all cases not provided for in these rules. Section 3268, attendance required. A common council member is required to attend all committee meetings and common council meetings. If a member is unable to attend, he or she shall notify the city clerk of his or her absence in writing and to be read as part of general communications. Any missing 3 consecutive common council meetings or 4 out of 6 consecutive meetings will allow the common council to consider censure of the councilperson. Section 3269, videotapings of meetings. The common council dedicated space at the rear of the pre-meeting room and beyond the council barrier in the common council chambers as to not interfere with the conducting of business by the members of the common council. All videotaping of the council proceedings by members of the media, council persons, or any other persons shall be conducted in the designated area of the common council. Council pre-meeting room and beyond the barriers provided separating the council persons' desks from the general public. B, judicial decisions indicate that any person present may record an open meeting using either an audio or video recorder, so long as the use of the recording device is not disruptive or obtrusive. C, the common council has determined that adequate space is designated for said recording and said space shall be utilized for that purpose. That the public, the media, and even members of the common council may stylize the designated place for video and audio. A resolution of the Common Council of number 12 of 4/4/2012 defines said permitted use. The Common Council does provide for and pays for, from its budget, the televising of Common Council, regular meetings held in council. E, the televised proceedings of regular meetings of the Common Council are and shall be deemed the property of the Common Council and may not be used for political or campaign purposes or to be used in any paid commercial advertisements. Section 3270 through section 3280, reserved. It's the end of the resolution of the proposed rules of order. It's all right, I used to play 4-hour jobs. I'm a musician. So, is there any debate from the floor at this time?
Yes.
Council person, would you like the floor?
Yes, I'd like the floor.
You have the
Thank you,
floor.
Mr. President. So what we're talking about here, and I'd be very happy to hear from the people who wrote
Actually,
this.
before we begin,
Yep.
I just want to specify something. If there is much debate, I will be controlling that debate as defined in Robert's rules. So if there are people that are consecutively for or consecutively against, I will begin to stagger those so that the debate can be conducted appropriately. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I've got in front of me the very thing that the president just read, and I have a number of problems, questions, confusions about it. So one is that 3248, select committees, it says that any chairperson can call a meeting of the committee of the whole. So each one of us, as the chairperson of this committee, which is the committee of the whole, any one of us can call a meeting of the whole. And then if you go forward to, and I might come back, but now you go to 3268, it says that a common council member is required to attend all committee meetings and common council meetings. So everyone is on every committee, which is the one committee, and we all have to go to all of it. So that's how I'm reading it, and I'm prepared to be corrected. That strikes me as just an enormously inefficient way for a group this size, with this diverse set of interests, expertise, different issues coming out of our wards to proceed. I run a small-ish nonprofit, much smaller than the city of Utica, certainly, and I cannot imagine us proceeding without committees. Committees are a fundamental way in which you divide the labor, you develop expertise, you dive deep on particular issues, etc. And yet this proposal would do away with all of that. So I will be voting against this. I think that we ought to have committees just like every other body like ourselves, everywhere in the world, but certainly everywhere in upstate New York. I did a survey a while back because I knew that this was going to come before us, and every city that's more or less our size operates, every common council operates with committees. They differ a little bit in terms of how many and what their subject matters are, etc., but everybody operates by committee. This idea of doing away with committees and all the language of we'll still have chairpersons and we'll have a committee of the whole is all just really just a ruse for doing away with committees. That's what we're talking about here, getting rid of the committees. We're not talking about organizing them in a slightly different way. We're talking about getting rid of committees. And anything, all the rest of that, the chairperson is all just a ruse for that.
Is that all?
I'm done, thank you. I'm done for now.
Okay. Would anyone like to address the questions that were stated, or would someone else like to obtain the floor?
I got a question on that. Could I have the floor?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
So I would like someone to clarify what you just said on that 32.68. Yeah.
Let's turn to the page.
Isn't that what you said? So we got to attend all committee meetings and all council meetings? Is that what this is?
Can I clarify it?
Well, so what I'm going to
He
ask
asked the question.
first is that the sponsors clarify. The sponsors of the legislation are Councilwoman McNeil and Councilman Miola. If you would like to clarify, you got it.
Everybody has to attend the meeting. It's not, of course, something happens, Councilman. Excuse me. Of course, something happens to you. Of course, you can't attend the meeting. The idea is to get as many council members in there for deliberation as possible on every piece of legislation we have. So, of course, if you can't attend, as it was in the past when we only had 4 of them, it ended up with only having 2 council members attending for deliberation versus a 9-member council, which we have here. The odds are in your favor when you have committee of the whole to have more council members participate during the deliberation than less. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Oops, I'm voting again.
Can you clear the board just for
Thank you.
reference? Thanks.
I think that's a typo.
Yeah. What?
I think that's a typo,
Which?
that all councilman members have to attend committee meetings.
No. It is.
So hold
it's
on.
not a typo.
Hold on just a moment. Hold on. All right. Judge Garamone, it wasn't a typo. Councilman Miola just specified it, and Councilman Lemetico, if you are
I'm not done.
okay, you still have the floor. That's what I was basically going to
I'm
ask.
sorry.
All right.
Sorry, Councilman, I didn't know you had.
No, I would think that we should change that And I don't think that every single council person should have to attend every single committee meeting. I think that I think we should be given the decision if we would like to attend those meetings or not.
That's correct, Mr. Councilmember. You can make a motion to amend that if you would like.
I'd like to make a motion. Judge, how would you clarify that in the
You
actual
can't.
writing on that?
You can't. It is fundamental if I can have the floor. Can I have the
Well,
floor?
so, hold on, because Councilman LaMedico does still have the floor.
I want to make a point
Yes,
of
big
order
question.
there.
Hold,
I'm
what,
gonna give-
all right, so, all right, you said point of order. What is your
No, he
inquiry?
said he's going to give me the floor. I would much rather have that.
Oh, okay, all right, you have the floor, it's been yielded.
It is you can't amend it because it is fundamentally ingrained into how the structure is as the current legislation is written. In order to amend meeting as a whole and giving the individual chairperson of the committee of the whole power to call a meeting, you have to fundamentally alter the structure that is being presented today. And so that is a flaw of the legislation, and it is a flaw of how it is written. And so right now, as it is written, as a chairperson, I can require all of you to come to my meeting whenever it is, because we're meeting as a committee as a whole. The only other alternative to that is if you have committees where you can call a subset together. That's the only alternative. And as it is currently written, if you miss 4 out of the 6, this same body can censure you and require you to pay a fine. So that's the only alternative. You can amend it, but what are you going to say? That they don't have to come? That they can possibly come? That means that if I call a meeting, none of you can show up, and then the question is on the floor, when will we ever have the work of the committee done? In addition to that, legislation is written that we're going to have pre-meeting conferences in the committee as a whole. That's already what we have in the back room. That's the first thing. The second thing is what we are doing is eliminating the work of the committee. That means that any legislation that comes to this body, I have 1 hour before Wednesday to deliberate, to write, to discuss, to draft legislation. And for the life of me, I don't think that 1 hour before a common council meeting is adequate to draft, write, and discuss legislation. And if your response to that is that that's not what we're doing, then what you're saying to me is that you're really having a committee meeting that's not transparent, not televised, not notifying the city, because you're doing the work of the committee under the guise of people meeting together that are going to be sponsoring and co-sponsoring legislation. It's a flawed legislation. I understand the intentionality of it, but the way it is written and the way it is presented is fundamentally flawed. It cannot be amended. The only option is that it be denied, voted down by the members of this common council. I'm done.
All right, Councilman LaMedico, would you like to, you did yield to Councilman Moody, would
Right,
you like the
but
floor
I'd
back?
like to get the judge's opinion on what Delvin just said.
Well, you would like to make you want to make a motion to amend, and you're requesting that the council,
Right.
phrase an amendment for you?
I would like to clarify
Okay.
what he said
Okay.
in reference to what the judges have to say.
Okay.
I'd like to say that, unfortunately, when this was drawn, a lot of the later provisions are Robert's Rules of Order provisions. And that provision about attendance at meetings, that has existed for maybe 20, 30 years, and it's in the rules that were adopted 2/5/14. And of course, that latter part, which is been there forever, has never been addressed and never been enforced. And I see it here because there were a lot of these, after the actual actions of the council, of being a committee of the whole, of having select committees, which they do, all of that follows all legislation that has been adopted by this council for years. And that particular provision, I must say, when this was written, I agree with the councilman from the 5th District that it is inappropriate. And it was all the time, it was inappropriate when it was passed in 2/5/14 to require, when we had the committee system, And we still have the committee system in this legislation, that all members of the council attend a committee meeting. And the idea is that it encourages councilmen to go to committee meetings because actually the law reads earlier that all members of the council could go to any meeting when there's notice. Committee meetings are not televised. There's no requirement, even in the open meetings law, that necessarily they have to be advertised, because that is not required because of cost. All you have to do is give notice, and notice is done through the media. So every committee meeting of this body always gets notice. When Councilman DeBranco called his public safety meeting, that was notice to the media. You get notice. And whether you attend a committee meeting, now being a committee of the whole, and you've got notice that, every one of you can go, or if the councilman receives or indicates that that is not a topic that is particularly interesting to the councilman, he may just adjourn or cancel that meeting. I mean, it's up to committeemen. This legislation, as far as the committee of the whole, really puts more responsibility on the individual councilman to find out what's going on the legislation on its own. And when the council person gets noticed that there is a meeting having to do with the police department, this legislation may attend any meeting. That council might go to that meeting, because that meeting, unlike the old rules that Councilman Testa said is ineffective, put into the hands of 3 people or 4 people, actually 3 people, what legislation you were going to see, because that would be reported out of committee. Under this legislation, you see all legislation immediately, number 1. Number 2, if the chair thinks there is a need for everybody to look at this after the chair looked at it and thinks that I need more input, calls a meeting. If you council people don't think it's that important, you're going to inform the chair you're not coming. So then the chair knows there is no controversy and there's no need for a meeting. That's why you have a chair. The chair cuts all the red tape out of your existence. But there's no question that whenever legislation, and all legislation is presented to you immediately, like Councilman Friend was bringing up, all legislation should go to her immediately, and you, all of you, and you review it. And if you want the chair, when it comes up at the meeting, to look into this, the chair can do it. If the chair thinks there should be a meeting of all of you or most of you, he calls a meeting. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. So I think to say that all have to attend committee meetings was incorrect. It's language that's been in there for years, and it should have been corrected when that was done. And I don't agree with Councilman from the 5th District that you can't amend that. You can just strike that that councilmen may attend all committee meetings if they desire. But the councilmen are required, and always are required, to attend meetings. There's a difference between committee and meetings. Meetings are the place where legislation can only be done. It cannot be done at a committee meeting. A committee meeting doesn't do anything, doesn't pass anything. It has no real effect, and that's why they call them committee meetings. You can't vote at a committee meeting, except the old rule voted them to whether you're going to see it, whether it's going to come out of committee. And Councilman Testa said in her last legislation, it just doesn't work. Things get held up forever. Committee people don't come, and required that they had to have a meeting with those people. This one doesn't. Calls a meeting, they come. Tonight, he called a meeting. I think 5 councilmen were here. Not because they had to, because they came. And of course, the old committee list really, whether it exists or not is really an open question, because any committee list has to be eventually passed. You see, in this legislation, you pass the committee list and the titles. So you don't need a separate legislation. If you leave it the old way, you have to pass a resolution acknowledging the titles and everything else that goes with it. So so if you wanted to amend that ancient provision that I think I agree is improper, I should have caught it when I read these things, but we got 69 provisions, and I missed it. So a council member may attend all committee meetings, but the common council members are required to attend. Remember, there's only 2 meetings a month. Those are meetings. You must go to those. That's when you can vote on something. You can't vote on a single thing at the pre-meeting caucus or a committee meeting. Under the old structure, the committee did vote to bring it out of committee and bring it to the council. And that's where all of the problems arise. The common council indicated in all their this young council had indicated they wanted 2 things. The committee of the whole was a sort of an open question, but as to the standing committees, the select committees, they wanted those to remain. And in these rules, the select committee structure doesn't remain. It's been expanded to 9 because every single one of you becomes a chairman of at least one committee, which I thought, and I think Councilman Miola thought, that's the way it should be. The chairman of the committee will be appointed by the president of common council, and because there's no other committee member, because you're all a member of the committee, there's no point in putting members. You're all members. If you want to go to the committee meeting about public safety, if you want to go to the one about whether we should do something about something else, and all the other finance, you're all going to end up at those. When they start calling for the budget, I think the committee that Frank Miola is council chairman of that all of you are probably going to go to that because you start talking about the budget. So I think you can amend that to really be in conformity of what is the actual thing. The fact that it's been there I could go to 1964 and probably still find it. It doesn't belong there in that form.
Mr. President, may I get the floor back?
Pardon me?
Well, yes, you may have the floor.
I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, I make a motion to amend sentence 1, section 3268, change from a common council member is required to attend all committee meetings and common council meetings. I'd like it amended to all common council members may attend all committee meetings and all common council meetings.
You would have to rephrase that, otherwise the language would deem that people don't have to show up to common council meetings.
Exactly.
Can you rephrase?
I think you're right.
Well, so,
Wait, let me refix that. A common council member may attend all committee meetings and are required to attend all common council meetings.
Regular or special?
it just says,
Regular or special?
Why can't you put should attend?
Unless it's
should or are is the same. If you want to make it legal, you have to use shall.
Okay.
Is that your amendment?
Yes, it is.
Is there a second to that amendment? We have a second from McNeil. Any opposed to that amendment? To the legislation that's on the floor, of course. All right, 2 nays.
To the amendment, not the legislation.
Exactly.
This is not to the amendment, not to the legislation. to
Well,
the amendment.
We're aware of that. Okay, so the legislation is now amended. The clerk has noted the amendment. Before we move on, there's been something stated multiple times. It's a matter of fact. I am not interfering with this debate at all as chair, but as a matter of fact, I do want to clear something up. Multiple times it was stated that the committees, as it stands now, that we are under right now, we're under the current rules of order that we were using previously by way of motion at our organizational meeting. Those committees, it was stated that those committees, in certain circumstances, held up legislation, and legislation was held back by as little as 2 people. That is not true. The current rules did provision for exactly what's going on tonight. The legislation that's before you under the current rules was not met on by the committee meeting. and also was pulled by way of majority vote from the committee meeting because the previous rules had a safeguard against what you are stating, and as a matter of fact, that was not going on. So carry on with the debate.
Can I have the floor, please?
Councilman Moody has been requesting that multiple times. So Councilman Moody, you have the floor.
Thank you. I want to respond to the point that the Common Council does not get legislation under this current system. It does. Any legislation that is presented, you and the clerk send an email to all of us stating what legislation is going into committee. Now, you know what's not on this agenda?
Are you referring to the current system?
I'm talking about the current system. That's what I said. Now, you know what's not on this agenda? The legislation that we tabled at our organizational meeting about the original rules that we set here. That somehow miraculously isn't in this agenda, and I would like a response as to that, but I will leave that alone. I'll leave it alone for this aspect. But you talk about transparency and legislation. That legislation was tabled and is not brought up in the conversation tonight.
Well,
additionally,
it does remain on the table.
I understand that, but
Yes.
it's not clearly demonstrated in the packet. I want to continue on to the point about the committees don't have a vote. I think that is such an statement in terms of the work of the committee. It's not just about a vote. All of us understand that in a committee meeting, no votes can be had. But in a committee meeting is when you talk, deliberate, write legislation. It is valuable beyond just voting yay or nay on a particular matter before the city. And so to say that because you don't vote in a committee, it's not important, I think is and I'm not characterizing the judge's comments as such, but I don't want it to be implied that because we don't vote in a committee, that the committee is no less valuable to the work of this Common Council. I do want to take my time and go through this, because if you look at 3-2-41, it said, right.
Can I just say one thing on that matter?
Well, if you would like to yield, that's fine, but you currently have the floor. Councilwoman, you're good? Okay.
Just one thing. I have contacted the clerk before, and it's happened a few times, and I asked for legislation, and I found out about it during, my findings of talking to people about things that were going on in my district and others for that matter. And when I called the clerk's office and I asked, can I please have the piece of legislation that I know exists? And I was told I am not allowed to give it to you until it goes through the president of the Common Council and he determines which committee it belongs in.
So it wasn't legislation yet?
So it was something that was it was a piece of legislation. It was regarding...
But it wasn't presented as legislation through our rules of order yet?
But still, if there's something that sits in the clerk's office and we ask for it, we should be able to have it in our hand.
That's not designated in these rules. If you would like, that sounds like a person was generating legislation and it wasn't presented yet. That's not germane to the conversation of the rules of order.
Generated legislation that I had asked for.
But was it sponsored yet and presented through the current?
The law department then had to send it to me by way of, the clerk sent it to me by way of me asking for it.
Was it in committee yet?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm putting to your point. Because it was not, because of the current
That was an issue
system.
between the clerk's office and the law department. That had nothing to do with the current.
It was not. When I had asked, point of order, when I had asked, I was specifically told that the president of the Common Council said that that you could not give out legislation until it had gone through you.
But
Under this council?
I had it.
Correct.
I did not have the
Correct.
legislation yet in that case.
Correct.
In the last week.
Correct.
I did not have said legislation that the councilwoman is describing yet.
I want to retain the floor.
It was the piece.
This is hearsay.
It was the piece of legislation that had to do with the seeker.
I want to retain the floor and make the point that I do understand that sometimes systems can have mishaps, but I do not want to make a value statement on the entire system based upon these instances. But I do want to continue with my comments and then, yeah, absolutely, Majority Leader, absolutely. D, if we go to that, so the chairperson of the designated committee entitled shall report upon the status of legislation that has been referred to said committee by the Common Council at previous meeting. Then if you go to section 3-2-46, there is no place. It is taken out of our order of business, a space for the committee to report on what it has done. She's whispering to say things.
Board of Standing Committees,
Huh?
it's number 11. Number 11 is.
As you were saying, Councilman Moody?
So what I'm saying is normally there is a space for committee persons to report, right? What is going on? Where's the mechanism in our order of business for them to report what has happened in that committee, right? So it's stated here, this is another mishap in the legislation as it's written. It's stated in D that the committee shall report said chairperson, which means differentiation of committee, not the committee of the whole. The chairpersons of said committee shall report, and there's nothing in here, as it is written, about where they're going to do that. That's the first thing. The other thing, and I understand this is this annoys people, but you know, this is a civil debate about the matter of the legislation. I'm not coming at any one person. I'm just making it on the merit of the legislation. Moving forward, said the Common Council shall select the title and members of the select committee therein, right? And none of that is itemized. And then if you're selecting committee members, right? What is the point of that if you don't allow them to meet? If you only allow them to meet as a committee of a whole? Now you talk about it's going to give the chance for the whole Common Council to meet, but in terms of quorum, the quorum now is increased. If I have a committee of 5 folks, the quorum is much less than if I have a committee of 9, which means in order for me to have a meeting, I have to have 5 folks there. So the quorum is much higher, which means it will delay meetings if folks don't all show up. And the other aspect, I think, which is core to this, and everybody says, well, legislation will be streamlined. We'll be able to get it, and we'll be able to discuss it in the pre-conference and committee as a whole meeting. And once again, I say that that means that if I have an idea, since that's my new committee, Wednesday at 6 o'clock becomes my new designated time to do committee work. If I have an idea or legislation, I have to share that 1 hour with department heads, other members of the Common Council of other points of legislation, and it is just not adequate enough. And what we will find is folks will be unprepared to really deal with the matters of legislation that come before it. And it will require other meetings in order to write good legislation that maybe we'll be informed of or may not be informed of. And so I think that this legislation is very problematic. We've already heard from the audience the aspects to table it. We cannot table this legislation because we are already a month in and we're operating under old rules. Either we going to accept those, move forward. I don't want to spend another month talking about rules. There are things that I need to get done for the people of Cornhill. It's why they elected me, and rules is not the thing that they sent me here to do. With that, I'm done.
Would anyone else like the floor? Okay, if there's no more debate, all motions are in order to bring it to a vote, to table, etc. Put to committee. What would the floor like to do? All right, motion. There's.
I want to make one amendment.
Clear the board,
I want to
please.
make one amendment that because I don't know how the votes are going to turn out, I'm not a psychic. If this is passed, I do want to make one amendment that I don't understand the Committee of Liaison, Controller's Office, and Budget Director. I just wanted to say that publicly. That way, if anybody asks me, I don't know what that means. But I want to make a motion to become the co-chair of Public Safety, Police, Fire, City Code, and Charter, given the legislative ideas that I have for the people of Cornhill. I think it would be befitting that I co-chair Public Safety with Frank DeBringo. I think we can bring some comprehensive legislation for the city.
So, as the legislation is currently written,
I would second
would-
his motion to add his name to the Public Safety Committee. Mr. Brango, would you welcome him for a co-chair?
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So what I was going to mention is that if this was passed, I would entertain that, considering this legislation specifies that the council president designates the chairs of those select committees.
Can I have the floor? Can I have the floor?
You may have the floor.
I would like, I mean, this is rather odd. We've got 9 committees, each have one co-chair, each have one chair, and now one of them has 2 chairs, right? And that's just sort of seems like a kind of an asymmetrical thing.
It is odd.
Hold on.
I
All right, hold-
want to respond
Councilman,
to that.
hold on.
Let me ask,
You have a question?
can I answer her, please? I drew this
If
thing.
the judge would like to answer, yeah.
May I answer
Yeah,
that?
go right
I
ahead.
drew the thing, and I did it from talking to everybody coming here tonight. Number one, Councilman Miola, who's really the biggest mover of this, and talked to other councilmen, he said, what about co-chair? I said, well, if they want co-chair, all they have to do is pass a amendment to designate people as co-chair, and to do that, you have to do what councilman from the 5th District did. He thought he should be co-chair. And I said, well, how can you put co-chair in there unless you know people want to be co-chair? And I said, that could you amend this that any person who wished to be a co-chair of any committee may request the same, and we'll put it in a separate resolution, or you could do it by voice vote tonight. And so if someone, you can't be chair and co-chair, but anybody could be co-chair, and you could be more than one co-chair. You can have only one chairman, but you have more than one chair. And also, Councilman, Mr. Galimi made a good point. When you do this, if you pass this, and you will allow for co-chairs, et cetera, if you pass it, then you have to pass the ordinance resolution, because you have to amend section 227 dash, was it 2, is it the council, Mr. Chair, is it, yeah. You have to amend the, oh yes, that provides that the president of the common council not only selects the title, he selects all the members, and there's legislation here, and it says he has that right because an ordinance was passed in '86 that was going to be effective in '88, saying that he does that. And there is a ordinance before you. Again, you probably didn't see this either, and I don't think you didn't see the rules of order either. They were submitted last week. You should have all got them so you could all see them, but you didn't. But anyway, this ordinance provides that section 2-227, which gave him the authority to do the chairman and all the titles and the members, said that whereas section provides that the president of the common council may appoint a chairperson and members of all standing committees pursuant to authority vested in him by common council, section 31, section 2 also says that they can give any duties they want to the president, and they gave him that duty in '86, effective in '88. And said, whereas the common council desires concerning all matters as a committee of the whole, and determine the title and membership of said committees. Now therefore be it ordained, the common council of the city of Utica amends and rescinds 227,
Judge, we can read that in the rest
227 in
later.
its entirety, except that it shall retain that the president of the common council shall designate the chairperson of each select committee with the added direction that such member of the common council, members of the common council shall serve as a chairperson of the entitled committee set forth in the rules of order. So the rules of order, as presently before you, not only gives you select committees as titled therein that you picked, it gives you the title that you picked, and if you wish to have co-chairman, you could pass a resolution that any member of the common council may submit their name to the council to be considered as a co-chairman, and then you can pass legislation to do that at a later time.
Thank you,
And
Judge.
you've already got Councilman Moody would like to be the co-chairman on public safety, and I thought that I don't know if, you see, you keep going on with amendments, you never pass anything that's already before you. Was there a motion to do that? That he would be the chair, co-chairman? That was made the motion, Mr. President?
Yeah, it was.
And
yeah.
was that motion seconded?
It was,
Huh?
yes.
Well, are you gonna vote on that motion?
Well, we would, yes.
Okay.
So, I'd like to bring that motion to a vote. Any opposed to that motion? Okay, the legislation has been amended. I just want to note that the legislation that the judge was discussing, which is an ordinance amending section 2-2-27 of the city code, is in the same committee this just came out of. That's the legislation he was referencing. Moving on, any other further debate and/or amendments before we bring this to a vote or take any other motions? Okay, your votes.
Mr. President, can I qualify my vote, please?
Sure.
Okay, as far as these rules of order, okay, I think, I looked at this numerous times. I think both sets of rules, the rules we operate now, work good. I like the pros of the council as a whole. However, I've been a councilman for 35 days. I've never been to a meeting. Well, actually, I've been to one tonight. So I'm very, very uncomfortable on voting to make a change on something. However, it looks from up there that my colleagues have supported this, and going forward, I will be 100% behind them, because like Councilman Moody just spoke, we've been 6 weeks worrying about public comment and rules of order, and we need to get together as a team. All pull on the same rope, and let's move it forward on the way we're going. So I voted against this. It is what it is. I will support my team going forward, and let's get together and all work together.
Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 yeas adopted. We have new rules of order. Is there any other legislation that you'd like to deal with? Okay, you have the floor, McNeil.
That has to be tabled.
You hand it to her?
Mr. President, I move to pull section 2-2-27.
Anyone want to second that? Miola will second that. Any opposed to pulling 2-2-27 from the Public Safety, City Code, and Charter Committee?
Can I? So this was just given to us just now.
No, that was placed in committee with the rules of order, both of them, and described. Yeah, she just rehanded it out.
If you don't have it a unanimous vote, you can't pass this tonight, because this is an ordinance, because the statute says that everything that's done by ordinance has to be done by ordinance. The authority that you're changing was done by ordinance, it has to be done by ordinance. An ordinance doesn't change because you've already passed the rules of order doing what
Yes,
that affected. And if you don't have unanimous tonight, you'll have to table it to the next meeting.
Then, Your Honor, Mr. President, I'd like
If you're
to
not
table
gonna
it until
vote for
next
it,
meeting.
table it.
Thank you. Motion to table, sir.
There's a motion to table. Well, actually, we didn't take the vote on pulling it out of committee yet. We were still in the middle of that when the councilman was asking what we were pulling out of committee. So any opposed to pulling this from committee?
We'll leave it in committee, then. Fine.
Well, the motion was made. Would you like to rescind the motion to pull from committee?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to rescind my motion. Remain.
Okay,
let the
still in
legislation
committee.
remain
I have to note, if you leave this in committee, and this is procedural, and I do understand that, of course, this is undoing things I can do, but I feel it necessary to note this. If you do leave it in committee, it will then again need unanimous vote the next time you bring it out.
No, it doesn't. If the committee, it's a citizen committee, all it needs is a majority vote. Thank you.
No, if it sits in committee and it is not brought to the floor by way of majority vote, it has not been presented on the floor of the council, and in accordance with section, second-class cities law, if it does not come out onto this floor for consideration, the next time you attempt to pull it will in fact be the first time it's introduced.
It's been tabled.
No, it hasn't been tabled.
It should be
They never
introduced.
pull.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a
Judge,
motion to pull it from
Judge,
committee.
No,
Judge, they never pulled it from committee. They never pulled it from committee.
Did they pull
All
it
right.
from committee?
I
Did
would
they?
like to
No,
make
they
a
did
motion.
not, Judge. They didn't.
All right,
They
let's
didn't.
pull it from committee.
All right, we have a motion to pull. We have a motion. We have a second to pull from committee.
Yep.
Your vote.
Point of information, well, really point of
Wow.
inquiry, because I do know Parliament. If they pull this from committee, right,
Yes.
they're introducing it, right,
Mm-hmm.
to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing it would need to be then passed is not unanimous, but 5 votes, right?
5 votes. That's on the second time it's heard on the floor.
So if they pull it tonight and table it, because rules are important.
Or put it back, either way. As long as it reaches this floor.
So before, if they were to vote on it tonight, it would need unanimous consent, given the rules of Robert's Rules of Order.
Of the council members
But-
in attendance.
Right. Of
Our
the council.
statute.
Right.
Mhm.
But because it was introduced tonight, tabled, when they bring it up again, it does not need that unanimous vote. It only needs a majority, right?
Exactly.
I just want to make that point.
Okay. So any opposed to pulling this from committee? Who's opposed to pulling this from committee? 2. All right, you got that? All right, it's on the floor. It's been introduced. So is there any debate? Would you like to bring it to a vote, or are there any motions?
Yes.
President, I'd like to make a motion to put it back in committee.
Can you clear this?
I second the motion.
All right, there's
I want to clear the board.
a motion to place this back in committee. Well, oddly, what committee are you putting it to?
Committee of the whole.
But you didn't,
You table it, you don't put it in committee.
so you want to put this in committee of the whole?
Yes.
Okay, because until you change this, the other committees still exist technically.
Now,
Yes, they do until they modify this. All right, so there's a motion to place in the committee of the whole. There's a second. Any opposed to placing this in the committee of the whole, which already existed, by the way, under the current rules, which is why you can still use the committee of the whole. Any opposed to placing this in the committee of the whole? All right, it's in committee. Moving on.
Can I make a point? It's important to read, and I know, I'm sorry, but this committee stuff really bothers me. If you read 2-2-27, it's talking about, if I'm not mistaken, the reports on the business.
Well, when the committee meets to discuss that legislation, if it does meet, then we can discuss it.
Okay.
Moving on.
what was his question?
He was just asking about this legislation that was already placed in committee. Do we have anything else in committee at this time? Or whatever we have?
Burmaster, you want to pull something out?
No? No.
Would you like to get back to the agenda?
Well, that's what I'm trying to make sure there's no motions. After all this, I'd like to be sure.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd like to pull out resolution number 4, resolution dissolving section 3248 and section 3252 standing committees within the Utica Common Council.
That lay on the table. If you'd like to make a motion to take from the table,
What's that? No? Cancel.
okay. If you'd like to address the council as a whole, please address the chair as a matter of parliamentary procedure, which under either rules we're working with, still is a matter of the fact that if you're going to talk to each other, you must address the chair and request the floor. Thank you. It's like pitch, there's no crossboarding. All right, the agenda, let me find it now. Okay, ordinances and resolutions. Resolution number 1 is a Commissioner of Deeds for Stephanie L. Teague. Would you like to read this one? Thank you.
It's a Commissioner of Deeds for Stephanie Teague. She's the new deputy clerk at Oneida County Clerk's Office, and this is commencing a 2-year term from February 5th, 2020, ending December 31st, 2021. Your votes, please.
Thank you.
8 yeas adopted.
Resolution 2 is a Commissioner of Deeds for John Moranti. Resolved that the Common Council does hereby appoint the following person as Commissioner of Deeds in and for the City of Utica for a 2-year term commencing February 5th, 2020, ending December 31st, 2021. John Moranti is the named Commissioner of Deeds. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
Next resolution is resolution number 3. Call for a public hearing regarding the sale of property at 301 and 319.55-1-94 Pelletier Ave to Hassan Kajejovic. Yeah, well, in the amount of $1,000 by the Urban Renewal Agency. Are we ready for a vote? Yep.
8 yeas adopted.
Thank you very much. Ordinance 4 is the sale of property at 301 and 319.55-1-94 Pelletieri Ave to Hassan Katejovic in the amount of $1,000 by the URA. This is the ordinance. Is there a motion to place this in committee? We have a motion from McNeil, a second from DeBrango. Any opposed? It's in committee. Resolution 5 is a call for a public hearing regarding the sale of property at 928 Lansing Street to Eden Dragovich in the amount of $7,000 by the Urban Renewal Agency. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
And I just want to note the public hearings are for the next following council meeting. It's Wednesday, the 19th of February. Ordinance 6 is the sale of property at 928 Lansing Street to Eden Dragovich in the amount of $7,000 by the URA. Is there a motion to place this in committee? We have a motion from McNeil, second from Moody. Any opposed? It's in committee. Turn to this next one, Resolution 7. So resolution to appoint David R. Ruffaro pursuant to Chapter 49 to the laws of New York, 1988, the Common Council does hereby appoint the following person as marriage officer. The term shall be until December 31st, 2021. David R. Ruffaro. Further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately in case he's marrying someone later. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
Okay. Next resolution is a transfer for $20,000 from fire communications equipment to fire communications / telephone.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but all these are not resolutions, they're ordinances. It's an ordinance.
Well,
The appointment of commissioners they're all ordinances. If they say resolved, they're incorrect. They're all ordinances. Everything
okay.
that passes an ordinance.
well, then we have to go back. Hold
Yeah,
on.
I just noticed that.
They are written as resolutions.
Yeah, they can't be. They're, everything you pass in that regard is ordinances.
All right, so for the Commissioner of
Resolutions
Deeds, and the,
That's an ordinance.
and the marriage officer, we'll just have to hold those till the next meeting, because obviously what we passed is not binding.
You have to correct it. You want that.
We can just bring it out again.
It has to be ordained, not resolved.
Well, why can't we just change the legislation, remove resolve and put ordained
If
in
you'd
it?
like to.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, great.
Let's start from the first one, which is, which page?
It's the first Commissioner of Deeds.
Is, okay. I would like to make a motion to finish the legislation to ordain Stephanie Teeds as a Commissioner of Deeds. No, I want it separate.
Here's what we should do. Just make a motion to strike the word resolved from the legislation where it appears.
But it's not even in the
and
first one.
Yeah,
and-
you do that.
I'm actually
It's a
still flipping to
typographical
it.
error, so you
Yeah.
can do that.
Motion to ordain Stephanie Teals for Commissioner of Deeds.
Okay,
Make a motion to
second?
amend.
DeBrango's the second. Any opposed? Okay, it's ordained.
I have to vote on it, please.
Oh, I said any opposed. Oh, did I? It's getting late. All right, well, bring it to a vote then. Use the board. Thanks.
8 yeas adopted.
All right, so the next one is for John Moranti, Commissioner of Deeds.
Motion to amend to ordain John Moranti, Commissioner of Deeds.
There we go.
Second.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, bring the legislation to a vote now.
8 yeas adopted.
Thank you. All right, and then the next is the marriage officer for David Ruffaro. It's in there twice, if you'd like to make the motion.
Motion to ordain Dave Ruffaro for a marriage officer.
All right, so there's a motion to replace resolved with ordained and further resolved with ordained. We have a second. Any opposed? DeBrango was the second. Any opposed? Okay, bring it to a vote.
8 yeas adopted.
Okay. Now, Resolution 8 which is a resolution. Transfer for
That's
20.
an ordinance. You're transferring funds. That's an ordinance, not a
What's going on
resolution.
here? It's a resolution at E&A.
Huh? What do you mean a resolution?
It's a resolution at E&A.
This is an ordinance of the common council approving an A&A transfer.
What did we just end up getting
Where
everything
you
written
get that?
wrong today?
Yeah, this is.
Motion to
I don't know
amend,
where they got that
resolve
Board of
to
Municipal-
ordain.
Yeah, okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to strike resolved with ordained, please? We have a
Yes.
second from Moody.
Yes, that had-
Any opposed? Okay. This Board of Estimate and Apportionment transfer is for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. It's for a sum of $20,000. I'll restate it. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
Hey, the last one's good.
Yeah, it is. Let's change it to a resolution just for the heck of it. All right. All right, the next piece is an ordinance authorizing the sale of DPW and parks vehicles and equipment for auction, ordained pursuant to section 7.007, the Utica City Charter. The mayor or his authorized representative is hereby authorized to sell city-owned personal property as described below. Further ordained that any such sale or disposition is subject to the approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, its various dump trucks, etc. Your votes.
8 yeas adopted.
The next
I'd like to move that the language in this one be changed, both resolutions changed to ordained.
resolution number 10, there's a motion to change from resolved to ordained. Okay, there's a second from Miola, no one's opposed. Lovely. 2019-2020 fiscal year transfer from police administration physician fees $30,000 into police administration repairs $30,000. That's the sum. Your votes.
Eight yeas adopted.
All right, so before we adjourn and we all go run off, I purposely did not interfere with the modification of the rules of order, regardless of my views on that. It's a position of the chair to remain unbiased and drive these meetings. Now, I do want to make a statement to the council and to the people that are still here. First off, thank you for staying, because it's been a long meeting. 4 years ago, I ran for the first time and took over this common council. My goals were to provide better transparency, figure out a way to allow people in the public to see what's going on within the common council, see legislation, and to take the council at the time, which was not following their own rules of order. They were using the committees then to obstruct. The council was, as a matter of fact, putting things on the agenda without driving it through their own rules of order that they enacted, without waiving those rules. The point of what I'm getting at here is I took that on and managed to reorganize the council regardless. I didn't write those rules I had to chair with 4 years ago, but I came into the council and reorganized it accordingly and achieved the goals I was looking for. That was better transparency and to get the council to function as an actual legislative body that deliberates accordingly. Now, regardless of the rules passed, the reason I'm stating this is because I will figure out a way to do that again. If I have to change what I'm doing to make sure people can see legislation in the public, if I have to change what I'm doing to get the new committee system to function and not leave out those potential 4 votes that aren't part of the quorum that can come together in a committee of the whole, because that's all we have now, I will. So moving forward, it doesn't really matter to me which rules you choose, because they are yours to choose, and I will figure out a way to do this job the way I intended to. So thank you. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, second.